for sure. It's been a long time, and so welcome back. And it looks a little different from the last time any of us were here, and I think that's a good thing. We have a new term of council. It's an exciting time. So we do have a full agenda. Before we get down to business, I will just have a couple housekeeping items. One, I would ask that everybody has their cell phones on vibrate to make sure that we don't have any interruptions. If you do have to leave the meeting, please do so respectfully and quietly as possible. Same for entering. We are having a hybrid meeting. Councillor Hughes is joining us electronically this evening, which is exciting. We have been waiting for this opportunity, and this is why we haven't been in council chambers, so it's exciting to have that option. It is also being live streamed. We have new cameras, and it's a learning process. So any feedback that you can provide would be greatly received, and we can make the experience even better every time. So please feel free to contact Town Hall with that information. With that, I will confirm that we are live streaming. Perfect, we are, so we will get down to business. First, I will ask if there's any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest on Special Staff Report number 1. I wish to declare that I have a pecuniary interest on the above noted matter. The general nature is that I own property in the downtown core and could be affected by this decision. I will leave that with the clerk this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. I also have a pecuniary interest on Special Staff Report 1, and the general nature is that I own property in the downtown core that could be affected by the decision, and I will file that with the clerk as well. Are there any other disclosures of pecuniary interest?
I don't have a pecuniary interest. I just want to confirm that you're both speaking to the zoning application then, right?
Yes, ZN 6-21-5, 325 Ingersoll Street. Thank you for that. Next, we will move forward to the consent agenda, and I will ask Councillor Bowman to move that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, Councillor Bowman, seconded by Councillor Hughes, that the items contained in the December 12, 2022 consent agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on any of the items contained in the consent agenda? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Next on the agenda, we have the council minutes. Minutes from the regular meeting to be adopted. Councillor Hughes, please.
Thank you, Mayor Petrie. Moved by myself, Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Hallerou, that the minutes from the October 11th, 2020 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Minutes from the special council meetings, please. Councillor Hallerou. Excellent. Any discussion on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll now move into special reports. I will ask Mr. Graves to present the first item, please.
Thank you, Mayor Petrie. The first report on tonight is the regular council meeting schedule. We're setting our schedule for the year, which is something we normally do, and we do that to be as transparent and predictable as we can be. Given that this is the clerk's report, I'll turn it over to the clerk to carry it forward from there.
Thank you. So this report seeks to establish Council's 2023 regular meeting schedule. So typically, and in accordance with the procedure bylaw, this report would have come before Council in October or November. However, it being an election year, I delayed bringing it forward to allow the new Council to set their schedule. You will see that with the exception of the three proposed meeting dates, the schedule adheres to the procedure bylaw, which establishes that council shall meet on the second Monday of each month at 6 p.m. unless otherwise approved through a resolution of council. The 3 dates that deviate from the second Monday of each month are Monday, March 6th, which is proposed so as to not conflict with March break. The reason being is that in the past, we've received requests from council to amend the March meeting date so as to not coincide with March break, which typically is pretty busy for people taking vacation or having their children at home. The second date is Tuesday, April 11th, Easter Monday is on the 10th, and then Tuesday, October 10th, as Thanksgiving is on October the 9th. Should council have any questions or concerns about the proposed dates, I am happy to answer those now. Otherwise, pretty straightforward report.
Thank you very much. Can I have Councillor Hudson move the motion, please? Oh, yeah.
Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Van Kooten-Boss, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receive staff report C-032-22 as information, and that Council approves the dates established in report C-032-22 to form its 2023 schedule of regular council meetings.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Mr. Graves, could you please present the second report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Petrie. The appointment of an alternate to the upper tier council is a report that's on next, and the County of Oxford only recently changed their rules to allow this. We feel it's important that we take advantage of that because it means that we have good representation on the county when we don't have everyone there. So with that, I'll turn it over to the clerk.
Thank you. So as Michael had said, this report seeks council's approval to appoint Deputy Mayor Wilson as the alternate to Mayor Petrie on county council should he be unable to attend a meeting for any reason. This appointment, as Michael has said, is permitted by provisions of the Municipal Act and then is further supported by both Ingersoll's and Oxford County's procedure bylaws. The intention of the appointment is to ensure that Ingersoll is appropriately represented at county council meetings should the mayor, who by virtue of his office is a member of county council, be unable to attend a meeting. The deputy mayor being elected position of council of the town of Ingersoll and the individual who is tasked with acting in the place of the head of council is the natural choice to be appointed as the alternate. If approved by council, I will provide notice to the clerk of Oxford County, who will issue an oath of office to the deputy mayor in advance of the first meeting she attends as Ingersoll's representative. And I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Van Kooten-Boss, are you comfortable moving a motion this time?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, Councillor Van Kooten-Boss, and seconded by yes, maybe we can't have Deputy Mayor do that. That would not be good. I'm assuming you will second that. Seconded by Councillor Hellerue, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receive staff report C-033-22 as information, and that council approve the appointment of Lindsay Wilson, Deputy Mayor, as the town's alternate member of Oxford County Council for the 2022 to 2026 term of council. And further, that the town clerk notify the county clerk of said appointment in accordance with the county's procedure bylaw.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next report, please. Municipal election report.
Thank you, Mayor Petrie. This is the wrap-up for the 2022 election report, and I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate Danielle and her team on a well-run election. This being her first election as clerk, she did a fantastic job delivering democracy to the town of Ingersoll. I'd also like to point out one interesting fact that I see in the report, that the two municipalities that utilized the vote-by-mail system had the largest turnout as opposed to internet voting, so that's kind of an interesting fact that comes out of that. But with that, I'll let Danielle highlight some more items in her report.
Thank you, Michael. So this report really is just strictly provided for information purposes and details additional information and statistics related to the recent municipal and school board elections that were held on October 24th of this year. Some highlights of the report include voter turnout, which was 41.3% for 2022, down from 2018 when it was recorded at 45.08%, and 2014, which was 45%. Unfortunately, voter turnout across the province was historically low at 36.3%, which was slightly lower than the previous low set in 2018 at 38.3%. Individuals aged 50 plus tend to have higher participation numbers than their younger cohorts, and voters continue to take advantage of the advanced voting window offered by the vote by mail method. Staff collect and present this data to provide context to Ingersoll's voter turnout results and to offer additional details as to who is voting and when. Further, staff will use this information to inform future election promotion activities with the intent of educating and encouraging the participation of those in groups that have historically lower participation numbers. The data derived from our voter management software, as included in this report, will be combined with the information gleaned from the forthcoming post-election administration survey to educate and inform staff on how to further improve election administration and accessibility. In summary, overall, staff are satisfied with how the election was administered and will continue to look at various ways to increase accessibility and engagement in the community. Should council have any comments or questions at this time, I am happy to address those.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to move by Deputy Mayor, please?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Bowman, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receive staff report C-034-22 as information.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this motion? Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens.
I want to echo what Michael said. I think it was a very well-run election, Danielle, and kudos to you and your team. It was great to have this breakdown. I don't think we've ever had a complete breakdown like we had this year, and nothing against you, Michael, in the past, but I like what Danielle did. So I wanted to have that said, and thank you to the Town of Ingersoll for coming out and supporting and voting out there. We had higher turnout than any place in Oxford County. That's awesome. I think that's great. I think it's a good community that we live in. And I was very impressed to see that the 18 and 19-year-olds had a 43% return. And that tells me that voting is still being emphasized at that age to get out there and vote, which is great. I'd love to see it up above 50%, but I think, to get them going, and with all the different groups that were out there electioning this year, then this has been perfect. So thank you very much, Danielle and your team.
Thank you. I love the enthusiasm. Unfortunately, Norge did beat us. Norge did have a higher turnout, so we don't need an angry letter from Norge. So we will recognize.
Gosh, I apologize profusely. I do not want an angry letter. I apologize, Norwich. I apologize. I did see that when I was going through, but second highest.
Perfect. We will take that. Any further discussion? Yeah. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mayor Petrie. I think Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens has pretty well said everything that needs to be said, but Danielle, I just wanted to also say thank you very much for a well-run election, and it is great to see that the turnout was 41.3%. That's pretty awesome. And again, just thank you very much for a good election.
Councillor Hallier.
I just want to say also a very big thank you, and one of the things as a new person running was the communication. Just that instant communication as she was gathering the results, it helped us galvanize the community to go, and it helped keep that momentum going. So the more we saw you send that email, the more we had the energy to say, guys, come on, go out and go out. So together, I think with that effort behind it, really helped. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next, we'll go to number 4, council appointments to certain boards and committees, please. Mr. Graves.
Thank you, Mayor. As a part of the new term of council, it is my suggestion always that council considers the mandates of its various boards and committees to ensure they're assisting council in accomplishing its goals appropriately. As such, the appointments to boards and committees will be made after those mandates have been reviewed. In the meantime, this report suggests making appointments to boards and committees that are governed by an external body and thereby its own mandates or by specific legislation. One other thing I'd like to point out in this report is that staff are seeking to bring the Development Coordinating Committee in compliance with Bill 109, More Homes for Everyone Act, which requires site plan decisions to be delegated to staff in order to streamline the process for applicants. So that's one other part of this report. That's the only things I wanted to highlight in this, so I'll turn it over to Danielle.
Thank you, Michael. So again, this report seeks to have council select and appoint from among its members appointees to certain boards and committees. The boards and committees considered in this report, as Michael had mentioned, are those in which council operates either at an arm's length, for example, the BIA Board of Management and the Police Services Board, and those boards on which Ingersoll is a participating member and does not affect control over the terms of reference, like Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board and the Ingersoll Services for Seniors Board. Council is being asked to appoint representatives to each of these listed boards, which may be for the entire term or shared among multiple members for a set period of time within the term. Staff have provided a brief overview of each of the boards to which appointment is being sought, as well as details on the board's meeting schedule in an effort to aid council in making its decision and its appointments. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions on the report.
Thank you. At this time, Councillor Bowman, I will not ask for a motion to be brought forward. We'll have some discussion first, and then we can come to consensus on these items.
Absolutely, please do.
The first one we will talk about, because it's the first one, is the Ingersoll Police Services Board. Are there any members who are interested in serving on the Ingersoll Police Services Board? We have two. We have Councillor Van Kootenbossens. We have three. We have Councillor Hughes, we have Councillor Van Kootenbossen, and Councillor Halleroo. I will open the floor to discussion on those. I'll give each one a person to talk, time to talk, if they would like to describe why they would like to be on that board, please. Start with Councillor Van Kootenbossens, Councillor Halleroo, and then Councillor Hughes, please.
Thank you, Mayor Petrie. I, in 16 years, have not sat on the Police Services Board, and so I'd like that opportunity to be able to see what this board is about and be able to serve that. Happy to split the term. We have had in the past where a councillor has sat on for 2 years, and then for the other 2 years, another councillor has. I was not reading that it couldn't happen. I'm not sure if that is possible, but would be happy to do that. Again, it's just, it's nice to be able to get perspectives from different boards and committees within the town, and so that is why I had put my name forward for that one. Thank you.
Thank you. The reason I think I'd like the opportunity is because as someone from the visible minority group, I'd love to really share with the police board incentives of how we could be more community policing rather than more, what word should I use? Basically, I just feel like it's an opportunity to kind of broaden the, perspectives for how we can police our community and get involved more than just, policing. So I'd love that opportunity.
I'll withdraw my name to be appointed to the board at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Would the two councillors both be open to sharing a term? Okay. Who would like to go first? Perfect. Do you have that information, Councillor Bowman?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that. We'll now move on to the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board. I will raise my hand to this. I am currently on the board. I have been since 2016. I'm currently the vice chair of the board. The reasons why I would like to stay on the board is at this time, due to the changes in the Conservation Act, we are not allowed to have, they've changed the rules on who can be participants on that board. We used to have citizen reps as well as council reps. Now 70% of a municipality has to be done through a council representative. That has led to, as long with election results, has led to only 5 of the 15-member board returning. The changes with the Conservation Act, as we go through Bill 23, along with numerous other revisions to the Conservation Act over the last 3 years, has led to a need for, in my opinion, as much as possible, have continuity on the board to go through these motions, through these changes. We will not have from my understanding, our chair return, Alan Dale, who was unsuccessful in the Norwich election. So I would ask for council support in continuing in that seat until a time when the board is more stable. But I will Absolutely. Hear from anybody else who would like to be interested? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Hughes, sorry. Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
It's okay.
Sorry, sir.
That's fine. I wasn't
was-
gonna, I was just going to say that if at any point in time, Mayor, that you want to back away from that, I would be happy to throw my name in at that time.
Absolutely. Certainly, we can discuss that, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. I will next move down to the Ingersoll Rural Cemetery Board. Is anybody interested in serving on the Ingersoll Rural Cemetery Board? Councillor Hughes. Anybody else? Christie, that was sorry, Councillor Van Kootenbos.
That was a thumbs up to Councillor Hughes.
All I'll say to that is, I serve on the, I was a council rep, and then I'm a plot holder rep at this time, so it's not through council, but I can say that it's one of the funnest committees. You do not think it is, but it is a great group, and Councillor Hughes has done great work, so I would support him on there as well. Next, we'll move on to Ingersoll Services for Seniors Board. Who would be interested? Councillor Van Kootenbos and Councillor Hudson. I will each give you time to speak as well. We'll start with Councillor Van Kootenbos and then Councillor Hudson, please.
I've been on there for the last term, and I was only supposed to do 2 out of 4 years. The deputy mayor at the time, Fred Freeman, was supposed to take over the last 2 years, and found that his time just wasn't able to be there. So I remained on for the entire 4 years. I absolutely love this committee, and I can understand Councillor Hudson wanting to put her name in there. I'd be happy to split the term with you. If I could do the first 2 years, since I'm doing the second 2 years over on this side, and then you take over, that would be great. But it is a great board to learn what Services for Seniors has here in this community and what they have to offer. So it's a great committee to be a part of. So.
Excellent. And yes, there will be plenty of opportunities when we have our committees of council to sit on lots of committees. So this is not the end, it's certainly the beginning. So there will be lots more opportunity as well. I believe we have all the items we need to move a motion, Councillor Bowman?
Yes, we do, Mayor Petrie. So I will make the motion. Moved by myself, Councillor Bowman, seconded by Councillor Hughes, that the staff report C-035-22 be received by the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll as information, and that Council make the following appointments for the 2022 to 2026 Council term. Mayor Brian Petrie and Council Representative Councillor Halleroux for year 1 and 2, Councillor Van Kootenbos for year 3 and 4 be appointed to the Ingersoll Police Services Board. Council Representative Mayor Petrie be appointed to the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board. Councillor Representatives Councillor Hughes to be appointed to the Ingersoll Rural Cemetery Board. Councillor Representatives Councillor Van Kootenbos, year 1 and 2, Councillor Hudson, year 3 and 4, be appointed to the Ingersoll Services for Seniors Board. And further that Schedule B of the bylaw 99-3881 be amended to strike the mayor and town councillor from the Development Coordinators Committee members.
Discussion on the motion. I will just say, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'd like to have a discussion regarding the Development Coordinator Committee about removing the mayor and or any town councillors from that committee. Is it? I'm going to say, is it going to be in our best interest to not have that insight on the Development Committee, Coordinating Committee?
Well, I'll speak to that if I can. Bill 109 has said that we have to delegate all of our site plan to staff. So that comes in compliance with that. The other thing is that we've already delegated site plan control to staff. So in my opinion, to having councillors on there, or members of council on there, we're kind of going against our bylaw. This is to include technical review of our policies to make sure that they're in compliance. if they're not in compliance, it needs to come back. Council is the appeal committee, so it would have to come back to council anyway. So that being said, myself and Deputy Mayor Wilson have already expressed our interest not to sit on the board even if without Bill 109, to make sure that the development process moves as quickly as possible through. And so council will still have oversight over our policy. We can change our policy at any time that we see fit, but it's up to staff, like any other policies, to put that into practice.
Thank you. Excellent.
Excellent. Councillor Cancun Bosons.
I just want to add to that, because I think that's a great way of looking at it. The other thing is that we are the appeal body. And so therefore, we're more at an arm's length away from it. We haven't sat through anything. We don't know. We can be more impartial when it comes to being that appeal body. So I do believe that it is in our best interest, honestly, for council to step away and leave that in the hands of staff and then be the appeal body if that's what's needed. So thank you.
Excellent. Any further discussion? Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, so just a quick question. I don't know if this is the right time to ask that. Will this result in the town having to hire any more staff?
No, we already deal with these types of applications on a technical basis already. The real intent of those meetings is you're technically getting everybody together from a bunch of different agencies as well as town departments. You want to put them all in one meeting room at the same time so that you can talk about how they connect directly to the services of the literal physical services and the roadway and how everything integrates into the property. So those services and those technical abilities are all at the table already. It's just that the council representatives were previously there, and now, because of legislative changes in our desire to make sure that we streamline this process, we're getting a lot more site plan applications, so we need to make sure that we're streamlining this process as fast as we can for the applicants so they can get moving on their projects. So it wouldn't require any more staff than what we currently have because they're already at the table.
Perfect, thank you. I just wanted to bring this forward so everybody understands why this is happening. So that we're not just trying to step away from our duties as counselors, that it's Bill 109, and that the process is going to continue moving forward at a quicker, hopefully at a quicker pace, and that we're able to do it within our budgetary constraints as well. Thank you.
Excellent, Councillor Hughes, and I thank you very much. Councillor Halliru.
In regards to that, does that mean that the approvals continue to go through and we don't get to see them unless there's a problem? We don't get reports or any appeals?
That's correct. So the process makes sure that the application is in compliance with our policies. And so if there is no issues, then the site plan would be approved at staff level and can proceed. Only if there is something that would need to come back to council where it does not comply for our approval, then that would come back to council. But so during the normal planning process, anything that's not part of site plan control, automatically, if you just come get a building permit and it meets all the zoning and the requirements for that, we would never see that at our level either. So we have done our work at the policy level by setting site plan control and then delegate that to staff to put into place. And that's why it would have to come back if it didn't meet any of the policies, because staff can't approve anything that doesn't meet policy.
So is there going to be regular reporting? Because I'm looking at a situation where if someone were to start on an approved plan and the community has concerns, at what point are we able to kind of address it and at least let the community know that this is perfect to go forward without it causing any friction?
I'll take that one, Mr. Mayor. There really isn't an appeal mechanism in this because what you're dealing with, and I think that's where the confusion lies, this is actually site plan application. So the properties that we're dealing with as site plan have already been approved for they've already got the official plan designation that's appropriate, they've already got the appropriate zoning, and they're just building on their site. Site plan is what we do to try and ensure that those buildings, as I said earlier, connect to services properly, they integrate into our road network properly, they have the right landscaping and sort of lighting and those things and how they integrate with the community. But in some communities, this started about 20 years ago, site plan processes, in order to expedite those kinds of things and ensure that it worked properly and integrated into that. So because of that, it's always been intended to be just a staff and a technical review. It's never been, because you're actually asking someone to go through sort of a planning process that in some cases may have actually already gone through both an official plan amendment and a zone change to get to that point. So then the intent is, again, you're trying to get all those technical advisors, all staff departments, including roads and engineering and county services, as well as sometimes MTO, sometimes UTRCA, and all those agencies in one room so they can speed up their development. And that's sort of the trade-off, is we make you go through this process, but we're giving you everybody in one meeting at one time rather than going to multiple meetings and resolving this. So normally, you would only deal with it when it becomes a planning application that likely would have been dealt with beforehand. Then that's where the community would get their input.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Carried. We'll now move down to item number 5, please. Ingersoll BIA Board appointments.
Thank you, Mayor. This board is established under the Municipal Act, and these appointments are following that portion of the act. And that's really all I have to introduce that. I'll turn it over to Danielle.
Thank you, Michael. This report seeks to have council formally confirm appointments to Ingersoll's Business Improvement Area Board of Management as selected by a vote of the membership of the improvement area, and also to seek council's appointment of a director to that board as permitted under section 204(3)(a) of the Municipal Act. So historically, council's director appointment has been a member of council who is also a member of the improvement area. However, this is not required. The Board of Management has communicated that it is seeking the appointment of Councillor Bowman as its council-appointed director. And should council have any questions or concerns, I'm happy to address those at this time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hughes, are you comfortable moving a motion now, or would you like discussion first?
Discussion first, I think.
Okay. Is there any questions or comments on this motion? Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens, please.
I think that Councillor Bowman being requested by the BIA is a great honor, and I have no problem in voting in favor of this motion if that's what it turns out to be. Councillor Bowman has been on that committee for a number of years, and when I look down at the names, I can tell you that probably 3/4 of this board is brand new. So just as Upper Thames, just as even this council, it has a lot of new members to it and needs the old member to be there. I can say that, and he knows that I don't mean anything bad by it. But I am also wanting to comment that because there's so many new members, it is great. This is exciting that the BIA has finally had a lot of new people step up and want to be on the BIA board. So I just want to congratulate all of those people that have put their name forward and have joined the BIA, and hope that the rest of council will support me as well in supporting Councillor Bowman to be on there.
Councillor Hallirood, please.
Yes, as former member of the BIA, I want to say congratulations to Mike, because even in watching him, he's always stood for us. He's always supported the downtown, and at the end of the day, with new people, like you said, they need some leadership with some new blood, with excitement and motivation to bring some, new foot on the ground to the downtown. I think he's perfect for the job, so congrats again, Mike.
Councillor Hughes, did you want to speak?
No, it's all good.
Okay, thank you. Any other further discussion? Are you comfortable moving a motion at this time?
Absolutely.
Please do, sir.
Moved by myself, Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Hallerou, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receive staff report C-036-22 as information, and that the following appointments to the Ingersoll Business Improvement Area Board of Management be approved by the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll. 1, Kathleen Young. 2, Lisa Jansen. Gordon Lesser. Chris Radford. Susan Wolf. Dave Cripps. Adam. Jen Weber. Wow, the easy one I stumbled on. and that Councillor Mike Bowman be appointed as the councillor representative to the Board of Management in accordance with Section 204(3)(a) of the Municipal Act. And further, that the above noted appointments be confirmed via Appointment Bylaw 22-5232.
Thank you very much. Is there further discussion on this motion? I would just like to congratulate all those members as well who've put their name forward. It is great to see. We've had a lot of turnover of businesses from older original owners to new owners who have chosen to invest in our community, and a lot of these are part of the new BIA. So it's exciting to see that happen and have rejuvenation in our downtown core, which is something which is always good over time. So I again congratulate them. With that, no further discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We will now move down to item number 6 and Kiwanis Club sign request, please, Mr. Graves.
Thank you. The farmers market in the downtown core has been a success for many years. This sign is located on town property, so it requires town approval before any changes be made to it. With that, I'll turn it over to the clerk.
Thank you, Michael. Last one from me. So this report is just to advise council of a request received from the Ingersoll Kiwanis Club to replace their farmers market sign located in the southwest corner of the town's municipal parking lot located at Oxford Street and King Street. The reason for the request, as you'll see in the report, is to replace the aging sign with one that is more vibrant and structurally sound. To facilitate this request, council will have to approve the sign's replacement, which will be facilitated by a lease agreement between the town and the Kiwanis Club. Staff are recommending approval of the request conditional on the club satisfying the building department's requirements under the building code and sign bylaw and the execution of the lease agreement that is attached to this report. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Could I have a motion from Councillor Hallerue, please?
Moved by myself, Councillor Hallerue, seconded by Councillor Hudson, that the staff report C03722 be received by the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll as information, and that Council approves the Kiwanis Club's request to proceed with the replacement of the existing farmers market sign conditional on the parties entering into a formal lease agreement and the club obtaining the necessary approvals for the building permit. And that further that Council's permission be formalized via bylaw containing a lease agreement as attached to report C03722 between the Ingersoll Kiwanis Club and the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this motion?
Yes.
Councillor Hallerue.
I'd like to say a very big thank you to the Kiwanis Club that has kept our downtown vibrant on the weekends for as long as we can remember. And I've always wondered when they were ever going to change that sign, because that was kind of a welcoming to many visitors as they drove to downtown. So I really think that is not just for Kiwanis, it is actually an uplift to our downtown, and I think they just so deserve it.
Thanks, Councillor Hallerue. I 100% concur with you. I would like to thank the Kiwanis for doing this. It obviously means that if we're going to make this investment, they're going to continue the farmers market for years to come, and that's something that we all enjoy. And I'd also like to thank the Kiwanis this year for all the events that they've been partnered with. They're an important organization, as well as our other service organizations that make our town very livable. Councillor Bowman, please.
Thank you, Mayor Petrie. I'd like to say the same thing. I'd also like to add that looking at the conceptual drawing, I think it looks very nice. I think it'll be a nice addition to our downtown. I think it'll be a nice promotion for not only the Kiwanis Club Farmers Market, but our downtown in general. So kudos.
Excellent. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We will now move on to number 7, 2021 Annual Financial Report, please, Mr. Graves.
Thank you, Mayor. It is always our goal to not end up in a deficit. Unfortunately, this year the surplus is higher than we expected, mainly due to our reduced cost due to COVID and a dividend from Earth that we didn't budget for. But we think we're in a good spot on that, where it's at due to those minor adjustments during the year. But it's very nice to have our auditor here, and with that, I'll turn it over to Irina to introduce our auditor.
Thank you, Michael. So staff would like to present for council review and approval the 2021 audited consolidated financial statements. The report also contains recommendations on the allocation of the 2021 annual operating surplus. Every year, town must appoint a licensed auditor for auditing our accounts and transactions, as well as providing an opinion on our financial statements. So our auditor, Cameron Johnson, is here with us tonight. So he will present to council and public the auditor's report and also provide some general comments. And then I will highlight the 2021 results and answer any questions council may have after the presentation, after Cameron presents. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Johnson.
Is this one's on? Okay. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Cameron Johnston. I'm a partner with Millar Gross Roseborough Chartered Professional Accountants, and it's my pleasure tonight to present the 2021 audited financial statements. I'd like to just highlight one report that I think you've all received, and that's the report to councilors. If I could just walk you through a few points of this. This is more of a governance standpoint of some information that is worthy to bring to your attention. Page 1 just highlights a brief introduction. Page 2 is a sample of the auditor's report. And I'll just bring this to, paragraph 2 in it is appropriate, and it's, these statements are as draft, but it's, in our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the consolidated financial position of the entity, so the corporation of the township of, the corporation of the town of Ingersoll as at December 31, 2021, and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. It was highlighted just before I got up that there was a surplus in the year. You'll see on these financial statements that there's actually a significant deficit. These are in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So this has changed quite a bit over the last, well, regularly, but it's changed significantly over the last 10 years, 15 years. And these statements now are more representative of what a full business set of financial statements are. Way back in the day when, on the financial statements, when council had a surplus, well, there was just another line below that that said amounts to be used next year. So then all of a sudden there was no surplus. And that, or the opposite, if you had a deficit, there was an amounts to be, generated. And so it was always zero. And then after that, there was an attempt to make it look a little bit better. If there was a surplus, it was like 2 more lines down that surplus disappeared. Now, they're much more representative of a full business financial statement. We're recognizing liabilities on these financial statements now, such as future post-employment liabilities, so liabilities of the town. You're also looking at things, significant liabilities are landfill. If you have landfill, for example, post-closure costs of landfill. For municipalities that do have a garbage dump, you can see that operating the dump is only one small cost of it. So the financial statements bring into a future and to a present value respect of the future cost to actually maintain that facility, similar to our future benefits that we have for our employees. When an employee works today, some of that cost is associated with today is the cost to the town of their future benefit once they retire, because they always have benefits beyond retirement. So those are brought into the financial statements. One of the things that we see coming up in the future is going to be also a liability for asset retirement obligations. And that's not, the cost to getting rid of a vehicle. It's looking at a cost to get rid of, make a building that has asbestos in it, make it ready for sale in the future. So it's the cost that is associated with where that there is an environmental issue with a property, and we have to now recognize those on the financial statements. So that's similar to what a business would be doing. So these statements are much more business oriented. And I'll highlight a couple of quick points on those in a couple of minutes. On page 4 of this report brings us to independence, and one thing that is important to note is that we are independent of the town. As a firm, we have a requirement to be independent, and that one of the key things behind that is that the fees generated from the town are not material to our firm. So there is no independence issue. Responsibilities of management on page 5. One key point is that the financial statements are the responsibility of management. Irina works very hard getting the statements generated from a cash basis, then converting them to a full accrual basis and a consolidated basis, and then we work together to get all the notes in place. And we also receive a management's representation on these financial statements at the end of the audit, and we have that, and it's actually dated for today. Some of the reportable matters, just to highlight a couple points on page 6. Significant accounting policies and principles. The key behind that is that we note that there hasn't been any changes to accounting policies and principles. And the reason why that's significant is that if you want to change your numbers, well, you change your accounting policy. If you want something to look a little bit better, you can modify an accounting policy to make that number look better. Our responsibility throughout the course of the audit is to ensure that the policies that have been changed are the most appropriate for the town and that they've been applied on a retrospective basis, so you really can't take advantage of a change in accounting policy. Materiality, we look at materiality in the scope of our audit. We can't look at every single transaction, so we always determine the level of materiality where if we do come across an error, at what point will that affect the users, the decisions of the users of the financial statements. Highlight also misstatement and significant audit adjustments that we didn't come across any throughout the course of our audit. Most of any of our differences we would consider to be trivial. The only unadjusted difference that we had in the year was just a question of reclassification between a revenue and an expense. It was a very insignificant amount, not trivial, but still very insignificant, but it's still reflected in the financial statements. We didn't come across any fraud or any other issues. Internal controls, one of the things that we do is we have a documentation of the internal controls, so how an invoice gets paid or how a payroll check, how payroll gets handled. We have documentation on how those are done, and then we also test those procedures and make sure that they're being followed appropriately. We didn't come across any differences between what was documented throughout the course of the audit. We didn't come across any illegal acts or any fraud. And I also report is that we didn't have any difficulties throughout the course of the audit, and with Irina and her staff, we also received excellent cooperation. Anything that we needed, we were able to get. And there was no limitation of the scope of the audit. The last page just highlights a couple of points about the current and accounting and reporting developments, and the key one is, again, is the asset retirement obligation. Irina is going to be working on that. That's part of a process that's going to have the most significant effect. We've seen a few others in the past few years where there isn't really an impact on the town, but this is the one that's going to pretty well affect everybody. And if not, you also have to assess all the properties that you own to see that it does or doesn't affect you. The next report is our consolidated statement, financial statement. And these are Irina's numbers. I'll just highlight a couple of points. You can see that on page 3 of this statement, our total financial assets in the year are $39,574,000 compared to $39,418,000 the year before. There is a good cash balance of about almost $24 million on the financial statements. Our liabilities, the number looks large, but it's a regular liability. That's our accounts payable and accrued liabilities, $6.9 million. That's ongoing matters and all. Depends on a question of timing at the end of the year. We do a lot more work at the end of the year to make sure that the cutoff is appropriate, that invoices that are being received in January and February that relate to 2021 are recorded back in 2021 appropriately. I mentioned briefly our employee benefits liability. That's the next number is $5,097,000. So that's sort of an actuarial estimate of what our future liabilities will be related to employee benefits, long-term debt, and then our boundary adjustment liability. That's the new one for this current year, and that's representative of an estimated present value of the future liability related to the annexation of the land at $24,257,000. Our non-financial assets, our tangible capital assets, that's our assets of the town. This is our roads, buildings, our water mains, everything that we have. This is representative of those assets and on a net book value basis. The last page, I think it's the last, yes, it is the last. No, almost the last page, third to last page. It's in a note to the financial statement. Sorry, I don't have it right in front of me here, but the note to the financial statements highlights your tangible capital assets. The net book value is $68,385,000 of your tangible capital assets. Believe it or not, that was actually a fairly new addition to financial reporting. 10 years? 10 years ago, we just expensed all of your capital asset additions. Now that they're around, and you can see that you have adequate asset management policies and working on asset management that brings council and staff to be aware of their obligations to maintain these assets on a go-forward basis. So it is fairly important. It's kind of interesting when this first came out, Australia was sort of the leader in tangible capital assets, and they argued at one point, well, how is it an asset? It's a liability, a road. All we have to do is maintain it. And they lost the argument. The argument was, no, it is an asset because it's the benefit to the ratepayer. But the town certainly has an obligation to maintain that. Our revenues in the year, on the next page, you can see our total revenues in the year, $20,053,000 compared to $18,008,000. And then our government services, that's the big change in the current year, $28 million compared to $3 million. And again, the majority of that number happens to be the present value costs associated with the annexation. Overall, in the current year, we have an annual deficit of $21,673,000 on a full accrual basis. Irina, was the actual cash surplus?
The cash surplus was confirmed at $532,000, a surplus. Yes, and I have presented the report to council back in June explaining the main drivers of the surplus, but if council has any other additional questions, I will be more than happy to answer them after the presentation.
In the next statement just highlights very briefly is our statement of changes in our net financial assets, and this gets us down to our net financial debt at the end of the year of $3.2 million. And you can see that it highlights our acquisition of our tangible capital assets. So in 2021, we spent $6.38 million on tangible capital assets compared to $3.1 million. Our depreciation or our amortization of these, so looking at an expense for the usage of these assets, were $3,025,000 compared to $3.1 million the year before. Proceeds on disposition, so we did sell something during 2021. We got $41,988 of proceeds on the sale. And the last page of the actual statement, and we get into the notes of the statements, just highlights our sources and uses of cash for the year. So just bring it, this is a statement that's quite confusing to a lot of readers, but in the second chunk of numbers, you can see changes in non-cash operating balances. Our taxes receivable, it's an increase in cash of $368,000. That just tells you that our receivable balance has actually gone down a little by $368 because we've collected the money, somebody else isn't using it. If our payables, let's take a look at payables. Our accounts payable have gone up by $706,000. That tells us that we owe $706,000 more than we did last year, so we're using somebody's cash. And it's all a matter of timing right at the end of the year. All those balances get paid and all those balances get realized throughout the course of the year. So I guess on behalf of Millards, through the mayor, if I could ask if there's any questions related to the statements.
Thank you very much for your report. Are there any questions, Mr. Johnson? Seeing none. Thank you very much, sir.
And on behalf of Millards, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Perfect. Was there anything you would like to highlight, Irina?
Well, Cameron stole my fire, so he explained all the numbers. But if council has any other questions, I will be more than happy to answer them.
Okay. I will ask, before that happens, that Councillor Hudson move the annual financial report motion.
Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Van Kootenbos, that the Council of the Corporation of Town of Ingersoll receive staff report T-018-22 as information, and that the 2021 audited consolidated financial statements be received and approved, and that Council approved the $532,428.75 operating surplus to be allocated as follows: $182,075 to the Public Buildings Reserve, $350,000 to the Arena Facility Reserve, $350,000 to the Facility Reserve.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion or questions? Councillor Hallerow, please.
I'm just wondering how we came to the share ratio of who gets what in the surplus.
These are merely suggestions from staff, recommendations, so council could reallocate the surplus as you see fit. So we were just looking at the balances in our reserves, for example, for the Public Buildings Reserve and the Arena. We know that we have a big, we have a MERC that council would like to proceed with building, so we'd like to build that reserve to pay for that new facility. And the Public Buildings Reserve, with everything coming on, with all the renovations on our existing buildings, we would definitely, you could use some funds in that reserve to pay for those upcoming projects.
So is this something that is set in stone, or is this an opportunity for us to discuss variances at the end of?
Absolutely, we could discuss variances. If you'd like to move an amendment to that, we definitely can, but we can have a discussion on possible changes to it, absolutely. Well, we can, certainly, I can ask for a seconder for that. I'm not seeing a seconder for that motion. We can discuss this evening if there's other things. I'm sorry, would you like to ask the clerk or staff a question?
I just want to get more clarification on if setting aside those ratios is set in stone, or they can be moved around in the event that anything else comes up that.
One thing council could do through you, Mr. Mayor, we could establish and put those into those reserves at this time. And of course, when you're setting your budget for next year, you can pull anything out of those reserves or reallocate them in that at that time. So it's something that we could put on for a budget discussion, is to, you know, remind council, this is where you put those reserves at this time, and then decide where to go from there through the budget process. Hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn for the treasurer, but that's...
That was an excellent answer. We also could allocate the funds into our general finance reserve, and then we could reallocate them at the when we do the budget, 2023 budget during
I think that makes more sense. Something general, so that it gives us a chance to take into consideration some other items that may have come up during the course of, say, the election, hearing people out, and then making sure that our decisions actually reflect people's interests currently.
So are you making a motion to that effect?
I'm making a motion for the money to be put in a general reserve, so that we can then have a clean slate to reevaluate. I would suppose that, instead of just allocating it and having it already decided.
Okay. Right now, there is a motion on the floor, so if you wish to change the motion is that they be allocated to where they were. So if you would like to change that, you will have to move an amendment to that motion in the effect of what you would like changed in it. Is that what you would like to do? That's correct.
I'm just moving the motion to have the reserve put in a general account, where we can then decide later on how to allocate it.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that amendment? I am not seeing a seconder for that. I'll ask again, is there a seconder for the motion? Not seeing it. The motion is now gone off the floor, and we're left with the original motion. If there's further discussion on the motion on the floor. Councillor Hughes?
Yes, thank you. To Councillor Hallerue, I believe as the Director of Finance mentioned earlier, that we can, at any point in time during the budget conversations, discussions, and we can transfer out of these reserves into either into the general, or we can transfer them towards or draw out of them to put towards any special projects that that we may deem worthy at that point in time. I shouldn't say deem worthy, that we want to put in place. So just to keep it in these funds, I think is instead of making another motion to move it to a general, it's just as easy as if we leave them in these reserves, and then we can draw from them at that point in time.
Perfect. And yes, council always has the, Councillor Hudson, please.
I just thought maybe, yeah, I just wanted you to, the word reserve, so it's not being spent, it's just staying in that position for that current time. So just wanted to reiterate that we can move it if needed. It's just reserved in that space, kind of just like a, it can be moved around. Yeah, holding spot, so.
Yes, and council will be having budget discussions, and one of those is allocating money to reserves. So this will be that can be brought up at that time. And then if there is further research that anybody would like to do to move that, that is certainly available to them at that time. Is there any further discussion on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor, please. Opposed? That is carried. We are at 7 o'clock. We have a scheduled meeting, a public meeting. Oh, no, yes, we will go to the public meeting session. Would any of council like a 5-minute recess? Perfect. I will move that we recess, and we'll come back at 7:05, please. Enter into a public meeting process for this evening. I declare the public meeting to be open. This meeting is being constituted as a public meeting held under the Planning Act for the purpose of hearing identified zoning amendment proposals. This meeting is also intended to provide the opportunity to any person in attendance to make a presentation to council. Anyone in virtual attendance who wishes to receive the decision of council on any application being considered this evening must submit a written request to the town clerk, Danielle Richard, at danielle.richard@ingersoll.ca. The Ontario Land Tribunal has the powers to dismiss any appeal under subsection 25 if an appellant has not provided counsel with oral submissions at a public meeting or a written submission before a bylaw is passed under the section. The first zoning amendment application under this public hearing is ZN 6-22-07 Wallace Line, applicant Hugh Handy. The application being heard concerns ZN 6-22-07 Wallace Line, applicant Hugh Handy. Does any member of council have a conflict of interest on this application being heard this evening? Seeing none. Has the clerk received any additional correspondence on the application that is not noted on the agenda?
I have not.
Thank you. I now request Planner Ron Verstegen to provide an overview of the application and an explanation of the requested zoning amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As mentioned, the first application for council's consideration is an application municipally known as, bear with me here as we get the screen up. The property, as shown on plate 1 of the planning report, maybe if I can expand it just a tad, is municipally known as 274171 Wallace Line. The lands are on the northwest corner of Wallace Line and Robinson Road. And in particular, the application is for an official plan amendment, plan of subdivision, and a zone change for the purpose of establishing an industrial plan of subdivision on the subject lands that would propose 4 industrial blocks, a sanitary pumping station block, a stormwater management block, an open space block, and a new municipal road. And maybe if I go to, So this is the actual plan of subdivision itself. You'll see there's one large block at the north end of the property that would be for development purposes. There's the road that comes from Robinson. We have 2 blocks on either side, and then there's a small block here that would be on the west side of Wallace Line, along with the sanitary pumping station block. Now, in terms of the policies, the lands are currently designated as agricultural reserve in the county official plan and have an environmental protection designation. The intent is to redesignate these lands to industrial, along with the environmental protection designation. And in the intent of the zone change is to rezone the properties from general agricultural to general industrial. The parcel itself is approximately 55 or 57.5 hectares, or a little over 441 acres in area. The lands are currently used, and I'll scroll back to plate 1, which gives the council an appreciation of the current uses on the property. They're currently used primarily for cash cropping purposes. There is a single detached dwelling in the southeast corner of the property, along with an uninsulated barn, both of which are to be demolished if the applications are approved. As council will see, there's also a combination woodlands in the northwest corner of the property, and also a finger that extends down in this particular location. The intent of those, if we can scroll to the subdivision, those would be protected through the open space block, which is block 7 on the proposed draft plan of subdivision. Now, as council is probably aware, these are part of a larger area that was brought into this township, into the town from the township Southwest Oxford in January 1st of last year. There was part of an overall area that was approximately 630 hectares, or about 1,500 acres. And now currently that is going through a secondary planning exercise that I believe the consultant will be coming to speak to you next month, just to kind of give you an overview of where they are with respect to that process. Now, the actual development blocks themselves are to range in size from approximately 0.6 hectares or 1.8 acres to the largest one, which is Block 1, which is approximately 22 hectares in area. 3 of the lots, obviously, are blocks would have access through the internal road as proposed. Now, as part of the application for zone change, as mentioned, the applicant is seeking to amend the zoning to a general industrial zone. As part of that application, they're also seeking to prohibit a couple of uses, and that's due to the proximity of residential uses in the immediate area. And the 2 uses that they're seeking to prohibit would be a concrete batching or mixing plant and a feed and flour mill and grain elevator. And through the noise study that the applicants conducted, they had determined that these would be incompatible land uses because they're heavier, have opportunity to generate more noise, which would have an impact on the residential properties that are located to the southwest and to the northeast of the property. Now, as detailed in the planning report, there is 8 studies that have been prepared by the applicant, and this really is intended, as I mentioned, there's a secondary planning exercise going on. So what the applicant is proposing to do as part of this review of this property to establish what is the highest and best use, they provided a number of studies that would parallel what would be basically a secondary planning exercise. Now, as part of that, it also included a peer review of the traffic study that was provided by the applicant, and also the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority is doing a peer review of the hydrogeological study along with the environmental impact study. Now, as far as some of the other elements why these lands were deemed appropriate to consider for council, again, considering that we have a secondary planning exercise going on, I think it's also important to bear in mind here in this particular case, considering the existing industrial uses in the immediate area. We have CAMI across the road on the east side, or on the east side of Wallace Line. We also have Verspeeten Cartage to the south. So the influence that they generate from a noise perspective really kind of predetermines what these lands may be used for. In terms of if there was an alternative scenario, perhaps maybe if these were proposed for residential uses, I could almost be willing to guess that CAMI and Verspeeten would be in front of you to basically advise you that it would have a significant impact on their property and the investment as an employer in the community as well. The other element too is important and just as important, considering the existing land uses in the area, is there is existing services in these areas that can be extended to accommodate these use and would not require and not impact on the future ability for any of the lands to be serviced down the road. From a provincial policy perspective, the policies there really kind of direct municipalities to provide for an efficient development patterns, an extension of existing development, and also to protect resources, green spaces, and encourage the efficient use of existing infrastructure. The other element too is that settlement areas, which is now considering these lands are within the town of Ingersoll, are to be the focus for this type of development. In terms of official plan policies, again, if the lands are approved or supported, the lands would need to be redesignated to an industrial to reflect that they would be used for an urban type of use, and also be reflective of the fact that these lands are now within the town of Ingersoll, and these are from an official plan perspective. Similarly, with respect to the zoning, as I've already touched on, the intent is to rezone these to a general agricultural zone, to a general industrial zone, save and except the 2 uses that they've deemed to be heavy uses that really are not appropriate for the site. Now, I think it's also, the planning report also details that while these lands are currently within the Township of Southwest Oxford zoning bylaw, they are obviously within the town's municipal boundaries. So you are basically the approval authority for zone changes. So when it comes to a recommendation at that point, it's appropriate for you to consider the zoning on the property. As the clerk has already mentioned, there was no comments that were received through the circulation of this application to the neighboring landowners, at least at the time of the writing of this report. So subject to any comment or questions from the council, that's the extent of my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Verstegen. Will the applicant or the representative advise if they have anything that they would like to ask or make comment on?
I think IT's working on that. It should automatically go up. Give them a second, sorry. Our cyber meeting back.
Yeah, no worries. And then Dave and Paul are online?
I believe so. I'll double check. Put the presentation up on there.
And I can use these guys too.
Okay, there it is.
Awesome, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. My name is Amanda Stellings. I'm a planner at GSP Group. We are the planner working with the landowner on this development. Just to introduce, there was quite a few consultants that were working on the project. We have a couple with us. So we have Paul Emerson in person and Dave DiFrancesco online, as well as Paul Eichinger. He's an engineer with MTE. So if there's any questions for them, they'll be available as well. Just want to pass it over to Paul Emerson for a minute to talk about 214 Carson Co. and give you a bit of an overview of their company.
Thanks, Amanda. Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, my name's Paul Emerson. I'm a friend of Chris Carson, who owns this company, and I was a former municipal employee too and planner, so he sort of brought me on to help him with some of these things. But I just wanted to talk about the 214 business. Chris started this about 5 years ago. Currently would have about 800,000 square feet of buildings that he has built, the 214 group. The model is to retain ownership and lease them out to industries. The work we've done is predominantly in Brant County, Woodstock. We're now moving up along the 401 to beautiful Ingersoll, and we have some land in Brantford too. I just want to say that Chris, he works in a way that he wants to work with the municipalities. I think your staff, well, we've had the good pleasure of working with Michael and Curtis and Ron, of course, from the county, and other staff, and they've been fabulous. But I think they'll suggest that we are open-minded and wanting to work with you on these projects. So we look forward to continuing to work in Woodstock. We bought some land from the municipality up on Newman, and we'll be starting a building up there probably next year. But this industrial subdivision, as Ron pointed out, is the first thing we've done like this. And there's, as Ron said, there's going to be a large block and then two smaller but large blocks. Would be our intention to build on the two smaller ones, but bride that 50 to 60 acres so that we, in partnership with the municipality and the county and everybody, can try and find a large user that would hopefully complement the CAMI or the other large industrial uses you have in the community or will be coming to you. So we look forward to working with you, and thank you very much.
So I think Ron did a good overview with the technical aspects of the application, so we're just going to do high level some additional features. So you can see on this where it's related in respect to CAMI and Verspeeten. So it is surrounded by industrial uses to the east and the south, with agricultural and open space to the west. As Ron mentioned, they were part of a larger area that was annexed from the Township of Southwest Oxford, and there is two processes going on right now, which is the secondary plan and the master servicing plan. So essentially, we're just jumping the gun a bit with our applications, but ultimately, our applications will get factored into both of those studies. In terms of the development, so Ron and Paul had both talked about it. So really, we're dealing with 4 industrial blocks. There's a large one that's intended for a larger tenant. And then 2 smaller blocks, which could either be developed as they're shown, or they could be subdivided at a later date, either through a red line to the draft plan or a part lot control application. So the intent is just to establish the uses now, and as tenants come available, then we could divide it up further. There is a new access being proposed on Robinson Road. As Ron mentioned, we've done a transportation study and it's been peer reviewed. So we're comfortable with the location. And just in terms of the pumping station and the servicing for the land, so that is a temporary pumping station. It would be intended to service this development. And then once the implementation of the servicing plan came into this area, then they would be hooked up to the overall servicing strategy. So several reports were submitted, and that served as part of the justification for the official plan amendment, and as Ron mentioned, the settlement boundary. So in summary, the application, so as Ron mentioned, the official plan amendment is to establish the industrial use and then to establish the environmental protection designation for the lands that we've identified as natural heritage, which were supported through an environmental impact study. And the zoning bylaw would be the general industrial and an open space. And the draft plan of subdivisions intended to create those 4 industrial blocks, the block for the pumping station and stormwater management, and a new road connection onto Robinson Road. So happy to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now open this meeting to comments from the public. This portion of the meeting provides the opportunity for individuals to speak to the application and have their comments considered by the planner and council before the report and recommendation of the requested zoning amendment is brought forward at a subsequent meeting. Any person from the virtual audience providing comments in support or opposition to the application may do so now by stating their name and address for the public record. Is there any members of the public who would like to speak to this application? Please come forward to the podium, please. Sorry, the lectern. Please state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Kim Harrison. I and my husband live at 403-393 Robinson Road, which is the only residential spot there on the southwest side of the total, which butts right up to our property. So my concern, of course, is water, because that's a big thing. Where is all this water going to come from? My well that's going to be used for this 4-block subdivision. Also noise and light pollution. When Verspeden went in across the road, we had a very good relationship, and they planted trees to keep the sound and the light, which was great. And I just wanted to have my say about the water, specifically the water, because that's a big area, and I just don't want my water to be affected, and the noise and the light as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for participating. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the public in the audience that would like to speak to the application, or is there any virtual members who would like to speak to the application? I'm seeing none. Would the applicant like to respond to at this time, or? Perfect.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So in terms of stormwater, there were several studies done. So we did geotechnical, hydrogeological. The stormwater itself will be retained on a swim pond, which was shown on the plan to the north. So there's no water being proposed to be drained on to any of the adjacent landowners' properties. Paul might be able to add something to the engineer as it relates to water, but I'll just quickly speak on noise and light pollution. So we did do a noise study. At this point, they do sort of a high level in terms of separation from land uses. And we had the, separation from the adjacent landowner. At site plan level, all the industrial blocks will be subject to site plan. At that time, they will have to do another noise study. And that will identify where the buildings are in relation to the adjacent neighbor, how far they're set back, if there's anything like a fence or screening required, then that would get incorporated at that time.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll just see if Paul wants to add anything on the stormwater.
Thanks, Amanda. It's Paul Eichinger with MT Consultants. If I understand the question, perhaps it was more related to water supply, but the proposed development will be on municipal water mains, so it won't be on well water. So that shouldn't impact any sort of water supply issues in the area.
Thank you.
If I could just add, and I know, thank you, Paul, thank you, Amanda, but we'll certainly be willing to work with the neighbors, whatever, to work out whatever buffering and whatever needs to happen, so we can maybe offline have some conversations, and as Amanda said, as this evolves, there'll be plenty of formal times to talk to, but, okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. Is there anybody else from the public who'd like to participate at this time? Seeing none, members of council now have the opportunity to ask questions about the applicant. However, they may not offer any comments at this time. Those will take place at the subsequent meeting. So if there's any questions from council at this time? Seeing, oh, Councillor Hughes, I almost
Councillor
forgot
Hughes.
about you down there. Sorry about that.
That's okay, no problem. Maybe I should just throw my voice up a little bit when I do have a question. This one's through, to Ron, through you, Mayor. Is it a good idea to start this process with the rezoning of these lands before we get the secondary plan results back? I understand that the use out in this end of town here is heavily industrialized, and it would be very difficult to look at residential, but should we be waiting for the secondary plan results before we start proceeding with this type of rezoning?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe, I'm of the opinion, I think this is appropriate to consider. Again, the logical extension of growth in this particular area is probably more industrial in nature. So in terms of it coming to some type of a different recommendation through a secondary planning exercise, I would suggest probably that won't be the case, because again, we don't want to try and purposely create conflicting land uses that can impact these other industrial properties in the immediate area. And again, the other element, as I alluded to, is that there is municipal services here, water and sanitary, so I think it's appropriate for it to consider, and it won't undermine the servicing strategy that would come out of this secondary planning exercise. So I think it's appropriate to consider.
Thank you.
Follow up?
Oh, sorry, follow up, Councillor Hughes, and then Councillor Howard, please.
Thank you. Okay, so that's good for that block, but how about to the north of this property on the Walker's Line and Thomas Road? If that is, I'm going to say decided or suggested should go to a residential, how is that going to affect that area to the north?
So sorry, just going through the mayor, the Thomas Road or Thomas and Wallace?
Thomas and Wallace line there in that corner, and then of course, because there is that corner lot, if you want to call it corner lot there,
Yeah,
beyond what is.
I would, through Mr. Mayor, I think that the lands up there are still part of the CAMI parcel as well. It's at the very northwest. So I'm thinking that's probably going to have some impact on what those lands could be used for. Again, I'm likely will be for industrial purposes as well.
Mr. Graves would like to comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, our intent is, and one of the main reasons we're undertaking the secondary plan is to ensure that we get this done as quickly as possible so that we can plan appropriately for the new properties. It's not surprising to us that we've seen applicants come forward with requests, and so like I say, that's one of the reasons why we're utilizing consultants so we can get this done. One of the principal things that we'll be studying is not just the land use impacts, but also the servicing strategy. So I think it's very important to point out that because this property has access to services, it probably is a little more ready to go through a planning application quicker than some of the other ones. As well, some of the studies that we've requested through this process are mimicking that secondary plan and dovetailing with it. So I think at this time, it's appropriate to be dealing with this one. I'd be surprised if there's any other properties that would hit all those check boxes to be allowed to be done this way, but it also makes it more and more important that council complete the secondary plan as quickly as possible so that we can make sure the rest of the areas are planned properly.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Halleru.
Just a quick question to the developer. Is there any chance at all, because of the focus of the secondary plan in the buildings that we require for our density, is there any chance that the landowner could consider building residential instead of industrial? Because there is the Robinson angle there that we could actually develop just in case. I'm just asking if there was any chance that they could choose to do more residential than industrial.
Through the mayor. Yeah, I think, as Ron mentioned, in terms of just compatibility with the CAMI plant, the Verspeet and Cartage, and then the rail line, residential uses could be a conflict. This is kind of nice because it's actually cushioned with the open space, so that actually acts as a buffer to those residential uses along to the north. In terms of potential for residential, I mean, you guys can speak to that.
Thank you. Are you referring to our lands or the lands to the north? Your lands. Yes. It has never been for the reasons that have been discussed, because of the proximity to the existing industrial, the rail lines, the access to the 401 from traffic perspective. It's never been considered for residential. That's not our business anyway, although there are a few little properties we've done residential on, but no, this was, from our perspective, bought with the intention of employment land happening there. Thank you.
Mr. Graves.
Thank you, Mayor. Point out too that council has to accept these applications because it is a planning application brought forward by the applicant in the state that it is. They are allowed to apply for what they apply for. Luckily, in this case, they are applying for something that I think we would be recommending in this particular property because of its proximity and the impacts to the neighboring properties and so on. So that works out well. If they were recommending residential, the staff would have some serious concerns because of those conflicts. So that's why we're here. But again, I reiterate that this particular one is one of the more unique properties in the boundary adjustment lands that has servicing. It's impacted by the proximity to a number of other industrial uses. And so it's probably the one that's the most obvious that can go forward at this time with an industrial application of some type. But again, all the more reason for us to do the secondary plan to make sure that the other lands contain what council wants and where possible it does include residential.
Mr. Verstegen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The other thing I wanted to point out with respect to the area of influence, the policies in the official plan and the noise guidelines through the Ministry of Environment, their area of influence from the CAMI site would be that essentially would be 1,000 feet. So anything within 1,000 feet is essentially, is supposed to be protected for that facility and for those operations. So anything encroaching in that with respect to and what would be considered a sensitive land use, which would be a residential use, would have to go through a series of noise studies to justify and demonstrate that it would not impact on the CAMI facility's continuation to operate. So it's a pretty significant amount, and that essentially takes up virtually half of this property that we're talking about.
Are there any further questions from council? Seeing none. If there are no further comments or questions, then the public meeting for this application is concluded. The application will now be scheduled to come before council at a subsequent meeting, during which the planner's report and recommendation will be considered. Thank you very much for everybody who participated. This is an important process which allows public input into these planning matters, and so it can be taken into consideration. So it's important to participate. I will now call on Councillor Bowman for a resolution, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, Councillor Bowman, seconded by Councillor Hughes, that the Council for the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receives planner report CP 2002-403 as information.
Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We will now head into our second meeting, zoning amendment application ZN 6-2208, 160 Carnegie Street, owner Ethan Williams. And I will turn that over to Mr. Verstegen to present the planning report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next property for council's consideration tonight is, oh gosh, I need the wattage on my glasses cranked up. I think that's it. Yes, okay. Next application, as mentioned in the report, is at 160 Carnegie Street, as shown on plate 1 of the planning report. And in this particular case, the applicant is seeking to amend the zoning, which is currently zoned restricted industrial, to a special restricted industrial in order to allow a standalone business or professional office on the property. Now, there is a provision in the bylaw that allows a business professional office, but it has to be accessory to the industrial use. So you have a contractor's yard and you have an office component. In this particular case, the applicant is proposing a standalone office or a couple of standalone offices in the building that would not have any natural connection to any of the uses that are permitted in the zoning. So the lands are currently designated as industrial in the county official plan, and as mentioned, are zoned as for restricted industrial purposes. In terms of the application, it's intending to establish 3 office units within the existing structure, with having a gross floor area of total of 462, or about just short of 5,000 square feet. In terms of what's currently exists on the property, that's currently approximately 1,725 square meters in area, and contains an existing building, including office space that was previously accessory to a contractor's shop. In terms of surrounding land uses, we have other restricted industrial uses on the south side of Carnegie Street, as shown on plate 1. We have residential on the north side of Carnegie, and then we have the CN rail lines to the south. And as depicted on plate 1 of the planning report, virtually the entire property is regulated or falls within the regulations of the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. And plate 2 gives the, obviously, a view of the aerial photo of the current uses on the property as of April of 2020. In terms of provincial policy, they do talk about encouraging an efficient use of development and land use patterns, and also provide for a range of mix of employment purposes to meet the long-term needs of the community. In terms of the official plan, as mentioned, the lands are currently designated for industrial purposes, which the policies do allow for a range of typically industrial uses such as assembling, manufacturing, fabricating, processing, as detailed in the planning report. Now, there is also policies considering the residential lands in the immediate area. There is also policies that allow for, in view of these areas where there is pressures, considering other land uses in the immediate area, the council may allow or reconsider these to be used for some other purposes other than industrial uses, and the policies speak to for limited service commercial uses that are directly supportive of and primarily supportive of business in the immediate area. In terms of zoning, the MR zone currently permits a number of light industrial uses, including but not limited to an assembly plant, a contractor shop, manufacturing plant, and a public garage or warehouse. In terms of public consultation, Mr. Mayor, there was one comment that was attached to the, I believe, to the planning report for council's information. And basically, just a quick overview, it indicates concerns with the increase in traffic as a result of the application and questions the impact of the proposed zoning may have on the existing character of the land uses in the area. So subject to any questions, that's the extent of my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Verstegen. Oh, sorry, I will ask that, does any members of council have a conflict of interest with this application being heard this evening? Seeing none. Has the clerk received any additional correspondence of the applications not noted on the agenda?
I have not.
Thank you. Will the applicant or the representative advise if they have anything they would like to add or ask or make comment on?
Yep, absolutely. Hello, good evening. My name is Ethan Williams. I'm the owner of 160 Carnegie. I just wanted to add to this amendment request that it's just to allow for the existing office spaces within the building to be used for professional purposes, as it exceeds what is currently required for the industrial tenants already in its full capacity of the industrial space. That's all I'd like to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now open this meeting to comments from the public. This portion of the meeting provides the opportunity for individuals to speak to the application and have their comments considered by the planner and council before the report and recommendation on the requested zoning amendment is brought forward at a subsequent meeting. Any person from the audience providing comments in support or opposition to the application may do so now by stating their name and address for the public record. Are there any members of the public who would like to come forward and speak to the application? Seeing none. Members of council now have the opportunity to ask questions about the application. However, they may not offer any comments at this time. Is there any comment or questions from council? Councillor Hudson.
The building was currently being used just as office space, was it not the old Walker building? I'm just clarifying. It didn't have an industrial use before this, correct?
Just looking at Ron if he wants to answer.
Was there, Mr.
I'll take
Graves?
it, yeah, thank you, Mayor. It was being used by the Walker office, yes, that's correct.
For
So,
offices, not for an industrial use?
For offices,
So they're
that's correct.
asking for it to be used for what it was being used for?
That's right. The
Okay,
only,
thank
it was never zoned for that before, but it was being used for that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions from council? Seeing none. Oh. Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, I had myself on mute. I apologize. So are you planning on, is your plan or idea, is it to set up a, like more than just one office for this use? Or are you looking just to make it so that so you can have a commercial business in there?
Yeah, so currently, the industrial business that is in there is already using up the full capacity of the industrial side. So the bays are already being used by them. So we have these excess offices and office space in the upper unit that is vacant at the current moment. So I'd like to allow for the opportunity to have professional uses in those spaces. So that way it's no longer vacant and it can be used for its required build.
How many offices are up in the top part of that?
There are 4 up there.
4? Through you, Mayor, to Ron, so this is just, or actually to Michael or whomever, so this is just an approval for him to go to county to ask for the changing of the zone to allow this?
Through the mayor, yes, that's correct. It's basically to allow this to be a standalone office space that's not accessory to a use that would be limited in or stated in the bylaw. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Verstegen. Is this is office space typically something that's considered appropriate with mixed use of industrial?
Through your worship, typically, no. Usually, business office spaces are what we consider to be more uses appropriately located in the downtown area, because those are the, where the employees and patrons that would use that office space would be drawn to. And typically, the only uses, office space, as I've mentioned, is for accessory to a permitted use. So it's typically not something that we would support, let's put it that way.
Okay, just to follow up to that, would there be any consideration given to limit the use of industrial uses if this was permitted?
Sorry, say that?
Would there be any consideration to limiting the industrial uses in the industrial section of this if office spaces were permitted? In the fact that if you have incompatible uses, you may have conflict.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would view, in terms of a sensitive land use, I would not say an office space would be considered a sensitive land use, so therefore it wouldn't necessarily impact on industrial uses. Typically, sensitive land uses are residential, schools, institutional, retirement homes. Those are would be considered more of a sensitive land use that may have an impact on industrial uses.
Thank you. Are there any further questions?
I have another question, Mayor.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Now I'm just quickly zipping through the report. So the zoning that he wants to have this changed to, is there any commercial opportunities that are not, that would not be allowed in this if it was zoned to a commercial use?
So you're suggesting some other kind of limited service commercial use? Sorry, through the chair.
Do we have, and again, without going in and looking through everything, do we have a limited use commercial zoning that might work?
I would not necessarily, Councillor, through a particular zone. There might be some uses that you could go through the highway commercial zone, for example, that might be permitted. But again, the policies speak to it really should be serving the immediate area, the industrial area, as opposed to the broader area, because those are really more appropriately located in commercial zones.
Right, okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none. If there are no further comments or questions, then this public meeting for this application is concluded. The application will now be scheduled to come before council at a subsequent meeting, during which the planner's report and recommendation will be considered. This time I will ask Councillor Hughes for a motion on this issue.
Bear with me for a minute, just got to grab that here. So that's 424. Moved by myself, Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Hallerou, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receive planner report number CP 2022-424 as information.
Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We will now go to the third zoning amendment application, ZN 6-22-11-37 North Town Line, owner Paul Price. Does any member of council have a conflict of interest on this application being heard this evening? Seeing none. Has the clerk received any additional correspondence on the application that is not noted on the agenda?
I have not.
Thank you. I now request Planner Ron Verstegen to provide an overview of the application and an explanation of this requested zoning amendment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last public meeting item for council consideration, as shown on plate 1 of the planning report, the lands are located on the south side of the North Town Line. They are municipally known as 37 North Town Line. And the applicant in particular is seeking to amend the existing R1 special rural residential zone to allow for an accessory building to be constructed on the property being approximately 1,920 square feet in gross floor area for personal storage. There is actually an existing, if I go to plate 2, it shows the existing uses on the property. Obviously, we have a single detached dwelling along with an attached garage. There is a small accessory building that the applicant is seeking to retain along with the new structure, and this plate 3 is provided by the applicant. It shows where they're intending to build the new structure, which is approximately in this area. This is where the dwelling is, and this is where the small accessory building is to be retained. So the smaller accessory building that's to be retained is approximately 180 square feet. So when you combine the 2 floor areas of both structures together, it represents a gross floor area of 2,100 square feet, whereas the bylaw, the maximum is 100 square meters or 1,076 square feet. So the lands are designated as low-density residential within the county official plan, and as mentioned, are zoned for residential purposes. Parcel itself is approximately just a little over 1 acre in area, and as mentioned, contains a single detached dwelling, an attached garage, and the aforementioned accessory building that is to remain. In terms of surrounding land uses, and maybe if I go back to, we have low-density residential to the east and west, we have high-density residential to the south, and we have agricultural lands to the north that are within the township of Zora. In terms of provincial policy, again, there's not really policies that reflect this type of an application, other than there's policies that allow for and promote intensification opportunities. Similarly, with respect to the official plan, the lands are designated as low-density residential, and generally speaking, accessory buildings to a residential use are considered to be permitted in the official plan policies. Now, when we get to the zoning bylaw, as the report details, there is 2 provisions that deal with residential accessory buildings in terms of trying to limit them, space of them, and the size of them. And the bylaw reads that the maximum is to be 10% of the floor area or 100 square meters, whichever is the lesser. So in this particular case, because the property is fairly large, it would be the 100 square meters that would prevail. That would be the determination of what's the appropriate size. Now, the policies and the provisions in the zoning bylaw are there to really limit the size, the height of these type of uses, so that they're appropriately sized given the size of the property, to ensure that there's appropriate amenity area, they're not impacting on drainage, there's sufficient parking. In this particular case, I wouldn't say that particularly applies. But the other element too about these is to ensure that they are clearly subordinate and secondary to the main use of the property, which is the dwelling. The other element that the provisions speak to too is dealing with the potential for these buildings to have an adverse impact on neighboring landowners. And that at some point they end up being used for commercial purposes or some other purposes, and other really strictly for personal storage. So in terms of public consultation, there was one letter that was received from the public, from a neighbor, that is attached to the report for council's consideration, and it questioned the need for the structures to be twice the size of what's permitted in the bylaw, and also questioned the opportunity for these to be used for commercial purposes, and then finally, what is the effect of these on neighboring property values. So, subject to any questions from council, that's the extent of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Verstegen. Will the applicant or the representative advise if they have anything they would like to ask or make comment on? Good evening.
My name is Paul Price. I live at 37 North Town Line, West Ingersoll. Been here for almost 20 years, and I have a love for cars, and this is why I like to have this large building, because I have almost 11 vehicles, and I need a place to store them. Because right now I'm outsourcing storage to store the cars for the winter, and storing them outside and all that, so I'd like to keep them all indoors. And I have lots of money tied up in vehicles, and they're going to waste sitting outside. And so that's my main goal, is to preserve old vehicles, and that's my passion. And it's for my own personal use, like my wife's into cars as well.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I will now open this meeting to comments from the public. This portion of the meeting provides the opportunity for individuals to speak to the application and have their comments considered by the planner and council before the report and recommendation on the requested zoning amendment is brought forward at a subsequent meeting. Any person from the audience providing comments in support or opposition to the application may do so now by stating their name and address for the public record. Absolutely. Please come up to the lectern, please.
Is the mic on or what?
The mic is on, yes.
Okay, well, the
Could you please start by
application says
stating your
Randolph,
name and
but I go
address?
by Randy. Okay, so I'm at 315 Thames Street North, which is the property adjacent on the east side of Paul and Lori. I didn't bother writing a letter because I didn't have enough time. I got too many other things on the plate. I guess my concern is, I think it's already been stated by Ron in the letter that was written by the neighbor on the other side about, is there a precedent being set here? And if so, how is that going to affect, I guess ultimately I'm concerned about the effect upon the value of my property. I'm at a stage in my life where have already contacted a real estate agent. I want to downsize. I live in a big old house. My wife died a few years ago. The kids are all gone. There were 3 cats. I don't need all this space. And I'm not sure that the expansion that Paul and Lori are talking about would enhance the value of my property. I don't know. I guess the other thing is, in terms of that, there's a total of 6 existing temporary shelters on, like, I'm asking you directly, are those going to disappear? So you're nodding your head, Lori, that's fine, okay. Yeah, because there are 6 shelters, Quonset huts, tents sort of idea that are housing vehicles now. So that's fine. But I go back to, what would the effect of this be upon the value of my property, and in terms of the other thing that I already stated, the precedent that's been established. If it follows through in terms of, it's basically twice what the existing bylaws allow. Okay, thank you. Done.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this, virtually or in person? Seeing none. Members of council now have the opportunity to ask any questions about the application. However, they may not offer any comments at this time. Are there any questions of council? Seeing none, including Councillor Hughes.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there is no further comments or questions, then the public meeting for this application is concluded. The application will now be scheduled to come before council at a subsequent meeting, during which the planner's report and recommendation will be considered. Councillor Hallerud, do you have a motion on this item, please?
So moved by Councillor Hallerud, seconded by Councillor Hudson, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receive Planners Report CP 2022-414 as information.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. As a reminder, if any members of the audience wish to be notified of the decision of the Council of the Town of Ingersoll in respect of any zoning bylaw amendments, they must submit a written request to the Town Clerk, Danielle Richard, at danielle.richard@ingersoll.ca. The clerk must provide notice of Council's decision to all those who request a copy within 15 days after the day the bylaw is passed. Anyone may appeal the decision to the OLT by filing with the clerk within 20 days of the notice of decision. The notice of appeal must set out the objection to the bylaw and any reasons in support of the objection, accompanied with required fees. If there are no further comments or questions, then I now declare these public meetings to be closed. Seeing none, they are closed. We will now return to our regular agenda, and we'll go down to item number 8, 2023 Budget Public Meeting Schedule and Direction. Mr. Graves.
Thank you, Mayor. Of course, the budget is one of council's most important documents, and just like setting our meeting schedule, our budget meeting schedule is important to be transparent and predictable for the public, so that's what we're here to talk about. I'll turn it over to Irina.
Yes, thank you, Michael. So the report just provides a preliminary dates for the 2023 budget special meeting, so council could hold meeting to review and do budget deliberations, and also presents an opportunity for our residents to provide feedback if they wish to. I propose 3 dates, 3 meetings. So in the past, we used to hold 4 meetings. Last year was a little bit different. We only held 2 meetings and the budget was approved in January. This being the first year of new council, we are proposing 3 meetings. So 2 meetings in January and the final meeting in February. So the dates are tentative, so council are more than welcome to change the dates as they wish. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will not ask for a motion at this time. We'll have discussion first on this to get clarity. I will point out that January 16th and 30th are Mondays and February 23rd is a Thursday. Hearing that, is there any comments from council? Councillor Hallerow, please.
Just to remember that the Roma is January 23rd.
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's a conflict in that week. Some of us are actually in Toronto for that.
From what I'm seeing from the schedule, it's the 22nd to 24th, and the proposed dates are the 16th and the 30th.
Oh, you said 22nd.
23rd.
February 23rd.
February 23rd.
Oh, February,
Yeah.
okay, sorry, Matt.
No, that's good
Right.
clarification. Are there any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, may I have a motion, please, from Deputy Mayor Wilson, please?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Bowman, that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receive staff report T-019-22 as information, and that Council adopt the 2023 budget timeline.
Discussion. Councillor Van Kooten-Bostens.
Quick question. These will be hybrid as well? If somebody was away kind of thing, then they would be able to participate hybrid? Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Our next item I will have a pecuniary interest on, so I will vacate the chair to Deputy Mayor Wilson to take care of that. Thank you.
Oh, my goodness.
There you go. I don't want that.
So we are moving to special staff reports, a planning report, application for zone change, ZN 6-21-05. And just as a note for other councilors, this was deferred from the last meeting, so we're returning to this, and if staff wouldn't mind summarizing.
Yep, go ahead. You want? I'll speak to it first then. Council may recall, this was deferred from your last meeting, and there were some declarations of pecuniary interest. It was deferred to the first regular council meeting after the election, which is this meeting. Staff feel they've reached a compromise that both reflects the desires of the applicant and the concerns of the community, but I'll turn it over to Ron Verstegen to give the full report.
Thank you, Michael. So this application, as mentioned, was it's a supplementary report. That was an application considered by public back in June of this year. The parcel is municipally known as 146 Culloden Road. I think it's that one. Hey, I won the lottery. So the parcel is shown on plate 1 of the report is on the west side of Culloden Road, essentially opposite from the Home Hardware, if council is familiar with it. And in terms of the parcel itself, the applicant is seeking to amend the existing highway commercial zoning to amend the on-site parking provisions that would be considered a shared parking ratio or a plaza parking type of scenario, and also allow for 5 additional uses on the property, which would include a commercial school, a business or professional office, a personal service establishment, a business service establishment, and then finally, a medical center with a max gross floor area of approximately 2,100 square feet. Plate 2 of the planning report gives the council appreciation of the use on the property, at least as of April of 2020, when the site was under construction. Obviously, the building is completed now, and portion of it is tenanted out. The plate 3 of the report is the site plan that was provided by the applicant in support of the proposal. The lands are currently designated for service commercial purposes, and as mentioned, are currently zoned highway commercial. Now, on the property itself, there is the 8-unit plaza, along with the standalone restaurant on the property. There is currently four units within the existing plaza that are tenanted out for eating establishment, and obviously there's the existing Burger King on the property as well. And as mentioned, the applicant is seeking a shared parking scenario on the property, and that's due to primarily the high nature of turnover of public that kind of frequents the building and frequents the uses, and also given its location just being north of the 401. Along with that, the applicant is also seeking to add the additional uses that I've already spoken to. In support of the application, the applicant supplied a parking study and a parking study as well. In terms of provincial policy, our opinion, the application in part is supportable and is in keeping with provincial policy. And there it talks to providing for an appropriate mix and range of employment uses to meet the future and current needs of the community. And in the other elements that we feel that is not consistent with the policies in the provincial policy statement, and that speaks to 171 of the provincial policy statement, which speak to the vitality and the viability of the downtown and main streets. And that is in specific reference to 2 of the potential uses, and that's a business professional office and a medical center. And I'll allude to those in a moment. As mentioned, the lands are designated for service commercial purposes, which are to permit a broad range of commercial uses that typically cater to the traveling public. The permitted uses are detailed in the official plan policies, and generally they're for hotel, motel purposes, automobile service establishments, business service establishments, convenience retail, along with retail sale of automotive supplies, and also restaurants and fast food outlets. The intent really of the service commercial designation is to provide for commercial purposes, but they would not necessarily compete with the downtown area. They're supposed to, the downtown core of the town is really to service as the commercial hub, business hub, and the cultural hub for the community. And in that particular case, why we feel that 2 of the uses that are proposed are not in keeping with the policies in the official plan. Now, with respect to the highway commercial zone, as mentioned, the applicant is seeking a shared parking arrangement, and the reason being is the way the bylaw right now defines or accumulates parking is every single use is considered on an individual basis, and they're added together. So if there's a restaurant, as determined in the zoning bylaw, 1 space is required for every 9 square meters. So if you have 9 units that are occupied for restaurant uses, the gross floor area for those is totaled on top of each other to come up with an aggregate parking requirement. So what the applicant is seeking instead is due to the nature of the high turnover rate of parking into the people coming and going at a fairly frequent basis, is to apply a plaza parking requirement, which basically kind of, it's a blended parking situation or calculation. In that particular case, as part of our research I did, it's not unusual, this type of parking scenario, to have in larger municipalities or in other municipalities, in particular Woodstock, Aylmer, London, Brantford, Strathroy-Caradoc, all have these type of scenarios. So it's not unusual for these particular. And in fact, the parking for those for those plaza parking scenarios is actually lower than what the applicant is proposing, which is the one space for every 14.5 square meters. Now, in terms of agency comments, probably the most relevant to consider are the town's chief building official, who indicated that agreement with the proposed bylaw amendment that establishes a max floor area of all of the eating establishments within the plaza of 971.1 square meters. That would recognize the existing situation for units 1, 2, 7, and 8 that are currently being used as an eating establishment, along with the Burger King on the property, and also allow for one additional unit to be used for an eating establishment. There's also a recommendation here to a minimum of 98 spaces be established as a minimum requirement, which would include the 4 accessible spaces or 4 handicap spaces that are currently exist on the property. And in terms of the additional uses, indicated that a business service establishment, a commercial school, and a personal service establishment is also supportable. In terms of agency comment, the remainder of agency comments, there was none that we received. And in public consultation, no members of the public appeared at the public meeting. So as I kind of wind up on this one as much as possible, in terms of the proposed uses, as mentioned, the 2 uses that we find problematic from a planning perspective are the proposed business and office establishment, the business professional offices and the medical centers. And really how we've interpreted that the policies that protect the downtown core is these are uses that are opportunities to attract public and employees to the downtown core. So in this particular case, we feel we're concerned that allowing these would migrate out of the downtown. We talked about it, would set a precedent, but then also simply are inappropriate given the hierarchy for commercial uses in the policies. And then for that particular reason, we're recommending that they not be supported. Now, with respect to the business service establishment as proposed, that actually is a permitted use within the official plan policies. So to allow these on this property, we feel is not determinate and has not been fitting and considered in the planning policies. In terms of the personal service establishment, in that particular case, what I've done is I've reviewed other municipalities within the county, and in particular Woodstock and Tillsonburg, and those are permitted within the highway commercial zone. So, and their policies hierarchy is very similar to Ingersoll's. So in this particular case, we feel it's appropriate to consider allowing these on this property. And then finally, with respect to the commercial school, through the review, there's a number of other properties that are outside of the downtown core that allow these as well. So in this particular case, it's our opinion that it really should not have a significant on the vitality of the downtown core. In terms of the parking, again, I think we're in agreement that it's appropriate to consider the shared parking situation. That said, now while the applicant is proposing a ratio of 1 space for every 14 square meters, what the chief building official has instead suggested, basically just establishing a minimum requirement of parking on the property. So it really, we don't have to do this constant, as tenants change, we don't have to do this constant calculations every single time a tenant comes and goes. And in terms of the eating establishments on the property, as mentioned, there's also a recommendation to cap the amount of eating establishments in the building, and that's really to ensure that it doesn't essentially become a large food court. It does force that some of the other units will be used for other commercial purposes, really what's the intent of the this proposed use. Now, that said, the cap of 971 square meters, that would recognize the existing situation and also allow for one of the additional units, either 5 or 6, to be occupied for a eating establishment. So basically, to summarize, Madam Deputy Chair, there's been a considerable amount of discussion between the CBO, CAO, and the applicants and myself. And in this particular case, the bylaw that's been prepared for council's consideration, we feel represents a reasonable compromise. It does allow the applicant to further tenant out the building, which is, I think, one of the primary concerns he has. It allows relief from the parking requirements as per what would be the normal requirement under the zoning bylaw, and also allows for additional commercial uses to occupy the building. So, subject to any questions from council, that's the extent of my presentation.
So just before we move on, I want to note that Councillor Hudson has left the room after declaring a pecuniary interest. So we'll proceed without her, but if there's any questions. Councillor Hallerow?
The question I have is there a reason why, for the purpose of being on the highway and attracting that much traffic, that we cannot take advantage of it being a full establishment for eating?
Sorry, my hearing's not very good.
I've noticed this property being vacant for so long, and I wonder if they have the opportunity to take anyone within that list without it being specifically divided, in an order that they are actually able to occupy the space. Because I imagine you're saying there's one that is not recommended for commercial within that 18 establishment?
Well, if I understand the question through the chair, I think what we're trying to here is provide a bit of a compromise in terms of limiting certain uses. I think what we try to do is give them here some flexibility. It's really up to you to tenant the building as you seem appropriate. And again, the uses that are there today may not necessarily be there in 4 or 5 years. It's to provide a range of flexibility for them, with the hope, of course, that the building is always tenanted out. We don't like to see, units stay vacant for a longer period of time. But the parking that we've come to the conclusion on, I think, gives them a reasonable level of flexibility to accommodate not only to tenant the building today, but then down the road. And the other thing, too, is important from a staff perspective and interpretation, is what we want to do here is make it as seamless as possible so that if uses come and go, they're not constantly going back to the building department to say, okay, here's my use, is it permitted? And then it forces the building department to go in and do some number crunching. Oh, wait a minute, because of the parking, because now the space, you now are above the parking requirements, so now you need a minor variance, and we want to try and head that off. We prefer to kind of do it once and have it done, hopefully right. We'll see.
Thank you.
I think Councillor Hughes had his hand up before.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, or Chair, I should say. Apologize. So basically, this proposal is to basically to remove the professional offices or a medical office, but the other usages would be allowed, such as the commercial school, personal service establishment, and a business service establishment. Is that what we're looking at?
Through the Deputy Mayor, that's correct, Councillor.
And other municipalities allow that, similar uses for the highway commercial in their certain areas that are not in their downtown?
Again, through the chair, I would say yes. Again, I tried to go through it as extensively as possible, and yes, that would be what I was able to determine.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to confirm the number of parking spots, because I've heard 94 and I've heard 98. I read in here it's 94 plus 4 handicap spots. In the resolution, it just says 94 regular spots. So should I be adding in 4 handicap spaces then? Because that, to me, we need to make sure that that's there so that we're not thinking that they can, because 94 is what they were, that's what they were asking for, if I'm not mistaken, which was 89 plus 4, 89 regular spaces plus the 4, but it should be 94 plus 4 to give us 98, should it not? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions?
I'm sorry, can you have him turn his mic on, please?
You had asked before about the possibility of making the entire plaza eating establishments because of the proximity to the highway and traffic that way. I should point out that our current bylaw requirement based on 1 parking space for every 9 square meters for eating establishments would require a total of 138 parking spaces for the facility, which is simply not feasible for the parking that's there now. The staff at all levels here at the county, the town, in conjunction with the applicant and IBI, we've worked very diligently to find an acceptable compromise that would accommodate the owner's requests to expand on the rentable area there and get other uses in. We think this is a reasonable conclusion to that, to accommodate everyone involved there. I would like to point out that the site plan that Ron had up before, if you can bring that back up a second, Ron, the site plan. So if you notice on the site plan, it has new spaces to be added with a circle for the 5 additional spaces on the east side. You'll notice at the back of the building, it shows 5 parallel parking spaces in red. Those spaces are not being considered, the ones at the back. I was of the understanding we were removing those from the site plan, so that may just be an oversight that they're still on there. We've looked at the sizing and the drivable area going behind there, and it's really just not feasible to count those as required parking spaces. So when you're looking at this and considering it, please note that those 5 are not to be considered in the equation. Thank you.
Any further questions? So hearing none, this is not a public meeting, but we have received a request for delegation from the applicant. So I would ask for council to consider hearing that delegation by moving a motion.
I'm sorry, can you turn your mic on, please?
Great. Moved by Councilor Halleru, seconded by Councilor Van, that the Council of the Corporation of Town of Ingersoll receives a presentation from Victor Labouche regarding zone change application ZN 62105 as information.
So, clerk, this is the wrong motion.
Oh, I think I have that motion already.
You're right.
Oh, that was the wrong
We're
one?
looking for a motion to hear the delegation.
Correct. Oh, motion to hear the delegation, moved by.
Do you have that, or do I have that? Did you
You
give that
do,
with me?
yeah.
You gave that with me, and I lost it in the pile.
That was different,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Sorry. I'll turn my mic on first so the Councillor Use can hear me. Perfect, and everyone else out there. I will so move, Councillor Van Kooten-Bosson, seconded by Councillor Helleroux, that we have the delegation from Victor Labreche come before us.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so Victor?
It was this one.
Yep.
I read it. That's the one I read.
It's not the one you read.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, council, councilors, town staff, and I was going to say public, but I think there's nobody left but me. My name is Victor Labreche. I'm the Associate Director of Planning for RDI Group in the Waterloo office. And I would certainly echo what others, staff members have said, that we've worked diligently to get here, and I appreciate those efforts and those discussions. We had a couple of meetings and a few discussions over the phone. And again, I appreciate that and your consideration to hear me as a delegation tonight as well. Thank you. I'll just note from the onset that, as I think Councillor, you had mentioned, the plaza and others have observed has been sitting vacant for a while. And that's really based on two things, mostly parking and I would say the limited number of uses that are permitted in the service commercial zone. I would also say from the onset that I support everything that's in the staff report, as Mr. Verstegen has outlined, in terms of the planning policies, and he went through a good exercise on that. And I agree with that in his conclusions. And I would say that over my 30-plus years of planning throughout southern Ontario, dealing with various size municipalities, large municipalities like Kitchener, Waterloo, Hamilton, allow almost anything in their commercial plazas that the downtown would allow. I respect the fact that in smaller towns, that becomes a threat to the core. I get that and respect that fully. So I think we had originally applied for 5 uses to be added here, and 2 were discounted as a medical center and professional office, and I understand that. We're not objecting to that. So the 3 additional uses we are hoping will allow the full occupancy of this plaza. The Burger King, in itself and with the drive-through facility, I think some can appreciate, are sort of the anchor tenant for this development, and it was always planned and intended for. The owner of this property, Sonny Baines and Baines Real Estate Trust, has had this plaza, for lease for over 2 years now. Consistently, every week, there's calls about restaurants wanting to go in there, more restaurants. And it goes to the councillor's question about, okay, well, what if we allowed all restaurants? I understand what the chief building official has said, too, with tempering that with required parking. But I'll come back to that in a moment. The other one was medical clinic, dentist, chiropractor. Those were the other uses that keep calling. There is a commercial school. I won't name the brand, but there's Cooman, there's Sylvan, there's Oxford that are, I think, is still potentially on the hook here, and that's one of the added uses, because it is on the outskirts or towards the suburbs of Ingersoll. So I think that type of use is complementary to the neighborhood. The other thing I would say is, and I hope you would tend to agree with me, that this is a very nice designed plaza. I can assure you, having worked with Baines Real Estate Trust over the years, they put a lot into it and they maintain it. They're not sort of, flippers, developers and flippers at all. And this is at the entrance to your town at, major interchange at Culloden Road. And I think the Baines Real Estate Trust is certainly proud of it. We've been proud of it. And I think the community is supportive of the way it turned out. And I'm just showing a couple of, as-built pictures of the area. I'm sure you've been by it, and also noticed that the parking lot is not well occupied. And it turns out actually over the last 2 weekends, we have done four parking counts on a Friday afternoon. Typically with commercial real estate plazas like this, especially when they have more restaurant component, the busiest times are Friday afternoons, Friday evening, Saturday afternoon, and Saturday evening. So we've done those counts. And I can assure you, because Mr. Baines has another business close by here, and in real time, I've had results sent back to me. The most amount of parking we've had, and I understand that 4 of the 8 plaza units are still vacant, but at least the plaza is 50% occupied. The Burger King's there. The highest number of parking we've seen on this site is 38, and that happened last Friday evening. So we have 93 parking spaces. So I think it stands to reason that even when the additional 4 units are occupied, one of which we can get 1 more restaurant, and then we can get one of the other 3 uses. We're only occupying a third today. If we go up to maybe occupying 70, I would say in terms of parking, I would be surprised that we would even get to 70 when it's fully occupied. So I say that, with full respect that there's been good discussions with staff. I can also tell you that throughout Ontario, and Ron and I shared some notes on this, as he said, most municipalities do have a commercial plaza parking account that runs from 1 space for every 20 square meters up to 1 for every 30. We're proposing 1 for every 14.5. So that's quite a bit more parking that we're going to be supplying here, about a third. And that stands to reason why I think the 93 that's there today will be adequate based on observations. And again, these parking counts are done in the winter when parking is typically higher demand. It's not into the Christmas full season yet, so I think our observations are credible. So, trying to keep a long story short, the overall plaza is well developed, well designed, high quality, fencing, landscaping has been about half completed, and the number of tenants in there is only, is probably 60% occupied for the entire plaza, and only a third of the available parking is being utilized, and that trend, I think, will continue. So in short, I don't want your decision to completely hinge on our request to recognize the existing parking as opposed to the additional, and I'll go back to the site plan, the additional 5 spaces that were pointed out being added to the site plan itself, but in this area. But the 93, I would respectfully submit to you, is more than adequate, even with the plaza being fully built out. And in your considerations, first and foremost, we want to make sure that we have a blended parking calculation to allow the full occupancy, those additional 3 uses. And thirdly, without jeopardizing the first 2, if you could put your mind to allowing the 93, so that additional 5 spaces wouldn't be built. It's a simple amendment to the bylaw that's, I think, the third last page in the staff report to say, rather than within the proposed bylaw, minimum parking is proposed at 94 plus 4 accessible. So we would request just your consideration to put that at 89 plus 4 accessible for a total of 93. Keeping in mind too that these additional 5 spaces will cost $30,000 to $40,000 to install. We'll need to do a revised grading and drainage plan and a site plan amendment, which just adds, I guess, respectfully, some more frustration to the developer's ability to, the financial requirements for the plaza, adding 5 parking spaces where we feel clearly it's not needed in this case. Thank you. I'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
I'd like to speak to the parking requirement again. 98, I think, is a reasonable figure. Just like to go over these with you again. We are looking at what would have been 138 spaces based on 971 square meters of restaurant use at 1 per every 9 square meters, which would normally, according to the bylaw, require 108 regular spaces and 5 accessible handicap spaces for 113. And then the additional unit spaces for the other units would be 478 square meters. That would be looked at as 1 parking space for every 20 square meters, which would require an additional 24 regular spaces plus 1 more accessible handicap parking space for 25 more. So the normal required under our bylaw is 138 based on the proposed, existing and proposed uses that are in front of you tonight. We have looked at this every way possible to come up with a reasonable solution here. We've reduced it by 40 spaces to 98. I cannot support a further reduction to 93. This has been well thought out, well reviewed. Right? Ultimately, it's the decision of the members, but those are my thoughts on that.
Just to clarify, if I may, Michael, the 138 you indicated as required, that would be based on 100% restaurants.
No.
We're not asking for 100% restaurant in this plaza, just 1 more unit.
No, that's based on 971.1 square meters of restaurant usage, 1 per every 9 meters as per our bylaw, would require 108 regular spaces, and then 5 accessible parking spaces for a total of 113.
Right.
And the additional use spaces for the other units of 478 square meters would require 1 for every 20 square meters for the business commercial uses that you're proposing, for an additional 24 regular plus 1 accessible for 25 more spaces. So that's where the 138 comes into play. It's considerably higher than that if you were to look at the, I used 138 only because I didn't have a calculator when I was referring to you. But it's considerably higher than 138 for the entire plaza if you were to look at restaurant use only, based on our current bylaw requirement.
I'd like to keep this simple. I don't want to confuse it over the parking. I would just say, in our observation, and again, Mr. Verstegen and with staff, we've had this discussion. I understand that you will be doing a zoning bylaw review in the future, and you likely will look at a plaza calculation like other municipalities are doing, and that is his own course to deal with. I understand that, but in real time, in observation, what the actual parking demand on this site is, it's a third, basically, of the 93 that's there today. That's all I'm pointing out. And we've seen that commonly going on in other places in Ontario, not just here. So first and foremost, we need a blended parking calculation, and we need these 3 other uses to allow the full occupancy of this plaza, which is beneficial, obviously, to our client, plus the town, and get this done and fully occupied and employed, too. If you wish to consider leaving it at 93, that's the purview of council. But I don't want the first 2 main objectives to get in the way of that, of difference in parking.
Michael?
Through you, I would like to state that I too agree with our CBO that I have concerns reducing it to anything less than the 98 spaces. You know, this is a pretty big departure from our current zoning bylaw, and we're making several departures on this, and it's a fair big reduction. And I point out that the area that it's in, Cloden Road, is an extremely busy road. It's not like there's any on-street parking in that area, and it's surrounded by a bunch of residential. There's not a lot of area for overflow parking if we're wrong. So it's nice to have numbers from a couple of weeks, but if we're wrong on those numbers and it's overflowing and we have parking areas, it's the town's responsibility to deal with those issues, and it could become a large headache in the future. I know it's difficult to accommodate a site. These property owners were cautioned at the early stages of this development that it's a rather tight site, and making parking spaces is difficult. But we feel this number is a great deal of work by staff and a great deal of compromise. We're willing to come to the 98 spaces, but I know myself and several other staff are not willing to go beyond that compromise.
So with the conclusion of the delegation, we'll have to make a motion to accept the delegation as information.
Moved by myself, Councillor Hallerud, seconded by Councillor Christie, that the Council of the Corporation of Town of Ingersoll receives a presentation from Victor Leberche regarding zone change application ZN 62105 as information.
Thank you. So we're moving back to the report now. Sorry, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Okay, moving back to the report now. Do we have someone who's willing to make a motion to consider the report?
I do. I have a motion. I'll put forth my motion, and then I'll speak to my motion afterwards, if that's okay. So moved by Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens and seconded by Councillor Hughes, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll approve the zone change application submitted by 325 Ingersoll Street, Inc., whereby the lands described as Part Lot 22, Concession 2 West, West Oxford, in the Town of Ingersoll, be rezoned from Highway Commercial Zone HC to Special Highway Commercial Zone HC-13, to add a business service establishment, a personal service establishment, and a commercial school as additional uses, as well as establishing a minimum of 94 regular parking spaces plus 4 accessible spaces, regardless of tenancy, and establishing a maximum gross floor area, approximately 971.1 meters squared, for eating establishments on the subject property as detailed in the planning report. I'm going to speak to this. There's a lot in here. And Mr. Rush, I thank you for coming and letting us be able to give that delegation to you. I understand you're wanting to ask. I appreciate that. However, I'm not willing to go against staff's recommendation. I hope you understand that. I have reserves of even going that low, to be very honest with you. I know that you've done your counts. However, my question would be, did you ever go out and go actually into the restaurants that were open at that time and see how busy they were? Because you can say that only 30% was being used at that time, and that's a major amount considering there's 4 that are empty. But if the restaurants were at full capacity or not at full capacity also plays a factor in that, not just the counts for me. I'm in agreement with our CAO that we have no place for spaces to go out on that road. That road is one busy road. I drive it every day, and I would hesitate being able to put any vehicles anywhere, even on the side streets. Clark Side Road is, again, another county road in that respect. There are trucks going down it every day, and so I think that we have to ask you to put those spaces in. I am very glad that we actually didn't put those 5 spaces in behind the building. When I look at the pictures that you were putting up, I would be hesitant to say to our chief, can you get a fire truck back in there with parking spots back there? And safety is always a concern for me. When it comes to restaurants, anything can happen, and we need to be able to get our fire trucks in there. So I'm glad that those 5 spots, I'm glad that those were taken off, but definitely I'm hoping that these 3 new spaces that we're allowing to go in there will help to fill it. I agree with staff that it can't be fully restaurants. We need to have something else in there. I know that it's difficult. We're just starting to come out of the pandemic, so I hope that everything will come together with the fact that these 3 spaces, these 3 different types will help to fill it. But I definitely have to ask for the 98 spaces because I think that we're going to need all of them. I'll be honest. And if I'm wrong, then fine. But if we're right, then at least we've planned for it and we've put them in. I know it's an extra expense, but I think it's very much needed. But thank you again for coming, Mr. LaBrush, and that's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further comments, discussion? Councillor Hughes?
Thank you, Chair, Madam Chair. Through you. Yeah, no, I agree with Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens in regards to the extra parking spaces. We definitely need those in there. As staff has said, they are somewhat comfortable with reducing the amount of parking down to this point, but to go down even further, no, it's I know Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens and I have really talked a lot about parking, especially in residential areas in regards to needing extra parking because it's the way it is. We just need that extra parking, and when there's no parking on the streets, as you know, it can be a bit of a bottleneck there now with especially if there's a lot of people decide to go to Burger King. They excuse me, they line up and they queue up into the road, and it really creates an issue there. Doesn't happen often, but I have seen it. But definitely we do need those spots to reduce the 2 other uses of professional office and a medical office. Definitely that should be focused to the downtown at this point in time, but to allow those other 3, I'm in favor of doing that to get those units populated and yeah, move forward that way for sure. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Please turn your mic on.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Any further comments or discussion? So seeing none, I'm going to ask that we put the motion to a vote. So does anyone need the motion repeated? We're okay? Fair. Okay. So all in favor?
Sorry, just to confirm, there was a bit of an amendment made to that, or I shouldn't say amendment, a bit of a change made to what was publicized, just stating 94 regular parking spaces with 4 handicap spaces, correct?
Yes, that's what I put in the motion. 94 regular and 4 accessible.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so I'll put to a vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? So that's passed.
Thank you, Council. I much appreciate your healthy debate and discussion and staff's time. Thank you. Danielle, just for the record, the name of the owner on the record, just. Do you need me to send you any articles of incorporation? Yeah, okay. It's the same principle, but there was yeah, I'll send you that. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. We will now, would anybody on council like a 5-minute recess? Yes? I will move that we have a 5-minute recess, and yes, we will be 5 minutes. So 8:55, please. Excellent. We'll reconvene, and we will start off with correspondence and resolution. So we'll start with AMO Cannabis Act legislation review. I'll call on Councillor Hudson to move a resolution for that, please.
Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Van Kooten-Bosson, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receives a correspondence from AMO regarding the Cannabis Act legislative review as information.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next, we will go to Oxford County Resolution, Better Municipal Governance Act. Councillor Van Kooten-Bosson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, Councillor Van Kooten-Bosson, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Wilson, that the council oppose Bill 39 and 23, and that council directs staff to review the County of Oxford Report CS-2022-49 and report back on the implications of Bill 23 on municipal operations and potential financial implications for the 2023 budget.
Discussion? No? Well, I will certainly speak to this. I'm glad to see this motion come forward. We've done a lot of work at the county. The county has a report coming at the December 14th meeting on Wednesday that will outline. It's available on the agenda on the website. And so there is major implications throughout the county and the municipality from the decisions the province has made. So far, there has been very little success in changing the provincial government's mind on the direction they've chosen to go. I've been absolutely so impressed by municipal professionals, whether it's the Clerks Association, the planners, the treasurers. It's just across the board, it has been warnings left, right, and center to the government that if they do the path, there will be consequences that will may have devastating consequences for decades to come and may not achieve the goals that they're stated for. I certainly support the resolution in that it's opposing Bill 39 and the fact that we are seeing a fundamental shift away from the principle of our democracy where the majority rules, and where we're appointing leaders to a vast majority of the population instead of letting that happen through an elected process. It's a vast centralization of powers, and it's giving the development community extreme power and authority where it should be placed within the municipalities. Not once has any municipality said they would not be willing to work with the government on these goals. I think we're all working. We saw some progress tonight with that, with streamlining our processes and doing what we could. Our town has been screaming from the rooftops that we want more density and more development within our neighborhood to provide diversified housing and accessible housing, and we're just not seeing the cooperation from the province or a recognition of the realities that the times that we're living in with shortages of materials, supplies, trades, and available. So more than willing to work with the provincial government. I think we are, but at the same time, we need to have full partnerships there and not have just be dictated policy to that is not in favor with the majority of the province. So 100% in favor of this, and thank you for that resolution. Any further discussion?
If I could just ask staff if there's any merit to looking at the implications further out than just the immediate budget. So right now, the resolution says just 2023. Is it helpful for staff to do impacts further than just the immediate year?
Mayor, I will say it is, and it's going to be a lot of impacts in the future, actually. But it gets a little hard for us because we're kind of speculating on what that'll be, so it's a little more of a crystal ball situation. But one of the statements I heard in the press was, or actually from the Ontario Home Builders Association, they said, I think they were talking about Windsor, they said the municipality has plenty of reserves for the next 5 years. And I thought, yeah, but it's not those 5 years, it's the reserves that come afterward. And that's the process that we have now for building up reserves to deal with certain growth things and even our asset management plans, which is another item outside of this, but it's building up those reserves for many, many years ahead that you have to work on. So yeah, it's probably going to impact us more in the future than it is actually right immediate.
Yeah, to add to that, if I could, a lot of the parts of the law that came in effect will be brought in through regulation. And I know the county staff is saying that they would love to give us a full impact, but they just can't because those regulations haven't been made yet. So until they are, we don't know the full impacts of these. And to be truthful, we haven't heard much from the province on where they're going with these regulations and the direction, which is scary. This is a continued path of change in the planning department, and the planning profile year after year, and there's no certainty that it's going to stop. And the biggest thing is, I read the other day in the county report, is that, you know, we have provincial policies that are usually, they agreed to a 10-year window from a 5-year window to allow our policies to catch up and have an effect. That was just done 3 years ago, and we're already having a major change in policy. So there is absolutely no time frame to be able to adapt from one to the other, and it creates a market uncertainty for both developers and municipalities and our partners. So I hope the province learns from that, but at this time there's no, I think we need to have strong opposition to this because there is no recognition from the province that they intend to have any listen to the feedback. It's concerning when you have a timeline that given for consultation, it's extended, and then the bill's passed before that's happened. That's happened with Bill 109 and 23, and 39 lasted a day after, so I guess they came through with that one, but it's concerning that none of the feedback has had any impact whatsoever. Our associated municipalities of Ontario, AMO, was left out of talks and given delegation status during these talks, which is very concerning. They do have a memorandum of understanding where they will be consulted. At this point, it may not be worth the paper it's written on, and that's a little bit harsh, but it's true. That, and it's not AMO's fault. I'm sure they would be willing to sit at the table, but we're not being asked to sit at the table. We're creatures of the province, but at the same time, we're recognized under legislation that under the Municipal Act, that we are responsible levels of government. And to be honest, we're not being treated like that whatsoever. We're being dictated to policies that are not in our favor, that are not good for our municipalities, and we're not even given a choice whether we can enact them or not. So it's a dangerous time for our democracy. Probably the most, I would say before this, several liability insurance and insurance premiums were probably the biggest threat to municipalities. By far this has overtaken this 100% to the maximum degree. Where will it stop? Will this chair be appointed by the provincial government? Yeah. It's a possibility. Will the possibilities of what they're saying and how it could be expanded to other municipalities would be a total breakdown of our democratic system as we know it. You could have 1 or 2 people controlling every municipality in this province. So at the end of the day, so it's a scary time, and it needs the full recognition of that and the attention from that. So I think I think we need to move forward with this and let the province know, as many of our neighbors have already done so, that we're not in favor of this. So perfect. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you for that. Next one is Township of Zorro Child Care Workforce Shortage Support Resolution. Deputy Mayor Wilson, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Bowman, that the town of Ingersoll support the resolution from the municipality of East Ferris regarding childcare workforce shortage, and that this resolution be forwarded to the Oxford County area municipalities and the Ingersoll District Chamber of Commerce to request their support and advocacy, and that this resolution be forwarded to the Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, and Oxford County MPP Ernie Hardeman.
Discussion. Sorry, did the mover want to speak to it?
Oh,
no. Okay, Councillor Van Kooten-Bosens then, please.
Thank you for changing what was put out there to begin with, because I was going to ask you to amend your resolution if it was what was originally put out there. So I have a child that's in childcare right now, and there just isn't the spaces. Ingersoll, what you're bringing forward, Ingersoll is at a very much of a shortage. I was on 113 on one place and 73 on the other place for Addie to get in. And it is so scary. I am like Deputy Mayor Wilson, am able to have means to get private daycare, but there are a lot of our staff right now who have children that are not able to find childcare. And it's very scary. But do I want to take it on municipally and have it come out of taxpayers' dollars? No, but we need to do something to fight it. And I think that we need to send the message to the provincial government and say, this is your baby and you need to put some money in here and support getting some ECEs so that we can have the spaces available for childcare. So thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, for changing it and doing essentially what Zora Township did as well, and putting it out there. So very much support all of that. So thank you.
Councillor Hallerud?
Definitely support the whole idea of reaching out and reminding the province of their responsibility. But just like you said, Councillor Christie has said, we do not have enough daycare spots. And this is where I find that delegating back to, county and the province is not solving the problem. We don't have to spend any money to necessarily invest in childcare, but I think every community is finding a way to encourage people to start their own private spots for daycare. And one of the responsibilities that we could help, take on is just to help train some people on what the risks are and what they can actually need to start a daycare. This is something happening across the country. Municipalities are helping with one night a month, training anyone who would like to start a daycare, supporting them with resources. First, our website, I was having a talk with Councillor Hughes, and I was just simply asking if you just go to the website and Google childcare, there's no childcare link even on our Town of Ingersoll site. So this is where I'm saying it is definitely worth talking and moving it up to the county and the province, but we got to do something. And when we talk about childcare support, we're talking encouraging those who could actually provide the space. A lot of newcomers coming to this town will not check Oxford County for childcare. They'll check Ingersoll for childcare. So either we connect our website to the county and now connect with the county to support us with the resources, what it takes to set up a daycare, the training, inspection. It is something simple that we can do without really affecting budget. And I think we need to start looking inwards to solve our problems rather than really just asking for our higher-ups to do it for us.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Wilson, please.
Sure, I just want to add, my intent with supporting increased ECEs is because the subsidized licensed daycare spots must be delivered by an ECE. So in order to bring the cost of childcare down, the focus needs to be on ECEs, which is going back to the province. So I think this is why it's important for us to really support that, and underscoring that this is also a workforce development issue. This is a growing community, and in order to fill those jobs, we will need childcare spots. So that's the last of my comments, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any further comments? No, I will chime in here and say I'm fully supportive of this. The county is to take advantage of the federal program for $10 a day daycare. The province has, the county right now has 10 licensed childcare facilities. 8 of them opted in to it. The other 2 did not. We weren't sure the exact reasons, but if we want more to open up and we want more spaces to be able to take advantage of that $10 a day daycare, we need the workforce to be able to do it. And I was unaware until Deputy Mayor Wilson informed me, this is an apprenticeship. So this is something that should have the same focus put on it as well as any other apprenticeship throughout the province. And we need to make sure that that's available, the training's available, and people who want to do this have the opportunity to. So again, no problem at supporting this and supporting it at the county level as well. So without further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you for that. We'll now move down to CP 2022-397, option for increased density. Councillor Hughes, please.
Yes, thank you. Moved by myself, Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Hallerud, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receives the correspondence from Oxford County regarding potential options for increasing density as information.
Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? We will now go back up to Oxford County trade show support. Councillor Bowman, please.
Thank you, Mayor Petrie. Moved by myself, Councillor Bowman, and seconded by Councillor Hughes, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receives the correspondence from the Oxford County regarding the 2025 Association of Ontario Road Supervisors, OARS, Municipal Trade Show proposal as information.
Discussion. See none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now we'll go back down to number 21, CP 2022-366 transition plans. Councillor Halleru, please.
Mike, please.
Moved by myself, Councillor Halleru, seconded by Councillor Hudson, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receives correspondence from Oxford County regarding the, is that item 21? The Conservation Authority Act, transition plans as information.
Discussion. Well, I can give you a little bit of update on this. Part of the updates to the Conservation Act required, they changed the programming and how it's funded and what can be funded from mandatory programs and non-mandatory programs, and there's different levels of non-mandatory programs. So part of that is to have a transition plan from the old system to the new system to 2024 is when that will kick in. And what will have to happen is you'll have to have memorandums of understanding between the municipalities for the services they want to receive on top of the mandatory service. So for any non-mandatory service that's been deemed under that, they'll have to have memorandums of understanding. In this report, the county does say that they're going to take over that process instead of the lower municipalities, which I am fairly supportive because right now I think that the problem is that multiple CAs fall within multiple the same municipalities, and you're going to want to have similar systems and programs within those. So there's a lot of negotiating going on about what provides what. CA levels of service that differ greatly from one to the next depending on the size. So this will be an interesting exercise for the municipalities and the conservation authorities to take on. So I think it is best done at the county level, and they can better coordinate that. They do at the end pay the levy for this for us. So that's where it's at right now, and that will again, by 2024, that will take place. Regardless, again, we don't know how Bill 23 will affect those because of the services being offered. They're allowed to be offered through the Conservation Authority have changed, so that will have to be taken into consideration. Councillor Van Kooten-Boston, please.
I have a question about that then. So you will be on the CA authority side, and you're going to have to make a declaration then and not sit on the county side, so you'll keep us informed through the CA side then, I'm assuming?
That'll have to be determined on depending on if there's any negotiations that have to happen at the council level. Most of these will be brought forward through staff negotiations as to what they would recommend at the end of the day. I don't particularly have a pecuniary interest from these because I will not stand to benefit, so that declaration wouldn't be there. I will say that if there is closed door negotiations, I will pick a side to be on and I will not participate in both. But I don't foresee that happening at this time because it is a public process. So, but absolutely, I will, yes. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We will now go on to Oxford County Automated Speed Enforcement Update 2022. Councillor Hudson, please.
Mike, please. Thank you.
Moved by myself, Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Van Kooten-Boston, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receives the correspondence from Oxford County regarding the automated speed enforcement update as information.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we'll go down to Minister of Transportation, Municipal Transit. Councillor Van Kooten-Boston, please.
Thank you, Mayor Petrie. Moved by myself, Councillor Van Kooten Bostonson, and seconded by Councillor Bowman, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ingersoll receives the correspondence from Caroline Mulroney, Minister of Transportation, regarding municipal transit support as information.
Discussion.
I had a question about that.
Yes, Councillor Halliru.
So I understand there's a 5,000 funding grant on this, and I wondered what it's earmarked for.
From my understanding, every municipality was at least $5,000. I don't know if staff has had time to plan for that, but I can turn over to Mr. Graves if you'd like to comment.
We haven't specifically, in any further applications, because we don't run a traditional transit system, we tend to not be eligible for. I don't know if anybody's got anything else to add.
I'm not aware of this grant. We receive provincial gas tax for public transportation, which we allocate to our paratransit services.
Okay.
It's my interpretation of the announcement. It was made for $505 million worth of funding available throughout the province, and every municipality was eligible for a minimum of $5,000. I don't know in this announcement whether it came out that you had to apply for it or if it was just automatic. Some of them you have to apply, some are automatic. So we can do some further investigation, but really there wouldn't be much that it would be. I would have to say I get where the province is coming from. They want everybody to be involved, but $5,000 funding, it probably could have been pooled up to a municipality that could have used an investment better than most municipalities. $5,000 doesn't really do anything, to be honest, so.
It can help us.
What's that?
It could help us create an app for our town.
And I think that it was intended for sort of COVID pressures, so it's probably to offset some of those costs that we would have already incurred.
Yes, we don't operate public transportation, so ours is strictly paratransit services, so we're a little bit limited in that regard. So, and we do receive some COVID funding, which we haven't utilized because we don't have public transportation. We don't need to clean buses or provide masks and stuff like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, the municipality does have a reserve from money that we've been received for transit, but unfortunately have no use for because we do not operate a transit system. It can only be used on capital, which would require funding something. Oh, would you like to clarify?
Yes, I'd like to clarify. So yes, we have been receiving provincial gas tax money and have accumulated almost $2 million, which we cannot use. Not that we can't use, we can use if we are introduced public transit, like bus services, stuff like that. So the province have amended the rules and regulations how we can utilize the funds. So we have started using a little bit for operations, but it's so last year in 2021, I believe we used $15,000. Same $15,000 were allocated for 2022 fiscal year. So, and we will see what we will be using in 2023, if any, from this fund. So it was allocated for the paratransit services.
Mr. Graves.
And if I could, through you, Mayor, we can give a fulsome detail of that through the budget process so that we can explain what that can be utilized for.
It's one of those. Councillor Hughes.
I just have a question. In the agenda, that letter from Minister Caroline Mulroney, there's 2 pages, page 2 and page 3, that are kind of blurred line thing after it was scanned. Would you be able to resend that to everybody so we could review it?
Yep, I'm hearing from the clerk that we can do that, so that's not a problem.
Thank you.
Perfect. If there's any further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We will now go into bylaws. Councillor Bowman, can you take us into the committee of the whole, please?
I was just waiting for Councillor Hughes to say, Mike, please. Oh, now he's got his mic off.
It's, yeah, right?
So, anyway, moved by myself, Councillor Bowman, seconded by Councillor Hughes. that the mover have leave to introduce and go into committee of the whole on the following bylaws. 1, appointments to the Ingersoll BIA Board of Management, bylaw 22-5232. 2, amended zoning bylaw for ZN 62105, bylaw 22-5233. 3, appointment of committee of adjustment, bylaw 22-5234. 4, November 15th, November 28th, and December 12th, 2022 confirmation bylaw, bylaw 22-5235. Council in the committee of the whole, Mayor Petrie in the chair. On motion, the bylaws are accepted as circulated. That constitutes the first and second reading of the bylaws.
Can I make an amendment to that motion, please, that number 2, bylaw 22-5233 be separated and dealt with separately?
Yes, I would so move that, or make that motion.
Councillor Van Kutenbos is second.
Yes.
Discussion? I'll just state that this would be separated so it can be dealt separately to deal with our pecuniary interests, and therefore we're not considering it. So all those in favor on the amendment? Opposed? That's carried. So now we can just vote on the original motion, and those will be dealt with. That one will be dealt separately. So any discussion on the amended motion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, we are now in committee of the whole on number 1, 3, and 4. So that'd be 5232, 5234, and 5235. Is there any of those bylaws that the members of council wish to discuss? Seeing none, then I will ask Councillor Hughes, will you rise us from the committee of the whole, please?
Certainly will. Moved by Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Hallerou, that the committee do now rise out of the committee of the whole.
Thank you very much. Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Deputy Mayor Wilson, will you please read the third bylaw, please? Third reading of the bylaw, please.
Mike. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hudson, that bylaws 22-5232, 22-5234, and 22-5235 be now read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed, and that this constitutes the third reading of the bylaws.
All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I will now vacate the chair and ask that. I will now vacate the chair back to Deputy Mayor Wilson to allow her to do the process for the third reading of the bylaw, or the bylaw that was not dealt with.
So,
Don't we have to put her back, don't we have to put her in the chair for the committee? Don't we have to go in the committee of the whole and put her in the chair?
Yes, what I'm suggesting is we just run back through the motions that we just went through, but just for
Whatever Councillor Bowman did, I'll do it.
Rick can't hear us. Out of all the things we dealt with tonight, this is the wrinkle. This is the wrinkle. Which I have to say, knock on wood, that's good. We did good, yeah.
And so I was just thinking that I could take Councillor Bowman's motion, the first motion within the bylaws, and read that, putting her into the chair as for committee of the whole, and then we just do each one of the steps if that's what you'd like to do. Okay, so why don't I just do that? I'll move by Councillor Van Kooten-Bossens, seconded by Councillor Halleroo, that the mover have leave to introduce and go into committee of the whole on the following bylaw. Amend zoning bylaw for ZN 6-21-05, bylaw 22-5233. Council and committee of the whole, Deputy Mayor Wilson in the chair. On motion, the bylaw are accepted as circulated. That constitutes the first and second reading of the bylaw.
All in favor? Okay, carried. Thank you, Michael. Is there any discussion on the bylaw? Seeing none? And a motion to rise out of the committee of the whole.
Moved by Councillor Hughes, seconded by Councillor Halleroo, that the committee do now rise out of committee of the whole.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Van Kooten-Bossens, that bylaw 22-5233, now read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed, and that this constitutes the third reading of the bylaws. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried.
Thank you very much for accommodating that. Okay. We will now move down to notice of motions. No? Oh. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. We have upcoming council meetings. We have a special meeting of council Monday, December 19th, 2022 at 6 p.m. here in Town Hall Council Chambers. And then we have our regular meeting of council Monday, January 9th, 2023 at 6 p.m. again here in council chambers. With that, we can make some announcements right after adjournment. After adjournment, yeah. So I will call on Councillor Halleroo to adjourn the December 12th, 2022 meeting, please.
Moved by myself, Councillor Halleroo, seconded by Councillor Van Kooten-Bossens, that the Council of the Corporation of Town of Ingersoll adjourns the December 12th, 2022 regular meeting at council at 9:30 p.m.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now that we're out, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to make? Yes. Councillor Van Kooten-Bossens.
Thank you. I would like, I know there's probably, and I'm going to learn more cultural places, but this is the month of December, and I want to wish all of our staff and the rest of council a very Merry Christmas from my house to all of yours. Right now, down in the park, we are doing from 6 to 8 p.m. collecting non-perishable foods, and we are accepting cash as people go through and see the Town of Ingersoll's lights. I am going to stipulate out there to the entire public while we're still live that it is free to go through. Our town has prepared all the lights, and they've done an amazing job. Please, Kyle, go back to your staff and thank them, because the lights are spectacular this year. I pray that people will leave them alone and leave them plugged in, because as I've gone through each night, I have a 3-year-old who loves to go through every night, and I see when things have been unplugged. So if you're one of those people that like to unplug things, please leave it alone. My daughter gets very disappointed in not being able to see Paw Patrol and everything else that's there. But as you go through, you start at the museum and come through, and at the Creative Arts Center is where we are collecting those non-perishable food items, cash. We are accepting clothing this year. I delivered today nine huge bags of clothing to the Salvation Army. They are in need this year, just like they are every year. And so I encourage you, if you are able to give, it doesn't have to be to us. It can be right to Interchurch. It can be right to the Salvation Army Food Bank. The kettles that are out there right now, every service group, council, Town of Ingersoll, everybody is out there standing at the kettles. And I thank everybody who's volunteered their time, because this community does an amazing job. I actually spoke with the head of Salvation Army today, and he is so totally impressed with this community and how they give and are able to support their own community. Toronto is, he said, having a very, very tough time supporting Toronto. And he said, I have to say, Ingersoll is doing very well this year, which is great. Does not mean that we stop giving, because there are still a lot of people out there who can't afford it. And if you're out there and you're listening and you have not applied for a box through Interchurch, that is still available. You can contact me directly and I can put you in touch with the right people. There are a lot of boxes that have been done up, folks, and there are a lot of people in our community who are going to be given an extra bit of a boost for the holidays, but they still need extra help. So please give of your time. I want to thank Councillor Hellerue for giving of her time this coming Sunday. Come and visit her. She'll be there on next Sunday night. I will be there tomorrow night from 6 to 8. So even if you're coming through, stop, because I've got candy canes to give out to everybody. So would love just to have a quick hello, and but come and see all the lights. Sorry, and the lights continue, right, Kyle? They go down into Memorial Park. That is a great place to get out and have a walk. You can park in behind the Baptist Church and walk all the way through that. It would be nicer probably with snow, but I'm not wishing for that. So I'm sorry for all those that want snow. I have no desire for snow. But go and watch and look and see what our town has to offer. The downtown area has the great big tree with music and everything else. There are a lot of light displays in our town. I don't know how many people have gotten out and driven in our town, but go and look. It's, I want to commend this whole entire town. This year, I've never seen it lit up. We're definitely giving a lot of money to Erie Thames Power probably this year, but thank you for doing it, because it's great to get out and see all the lights. So go and visit our downtown merchants. I'll put a plug in. Usually Councillor Lesser, who was on council before, would put that plug in. I don't know if I'm taking your thunder, Councillor Bowman, but go and visit all of our downtown merchants, because they could use the support this year, I'm sure. Everybody's needing that support right now. Our restaurants are too. And just have a great Merry Christmas. Enjoy it with your family and your friends. And we'll start budget next week, and that's going to be fun as well. I'm excited. We have a great council sitting around this table, and but have a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Van Kootenbos. Would anybody else like to have any announcements? Councillor Bowman, please.
Thank you, Mayor Petrie. Thanks, Christy, for taking all my thunder. But no, we had the downtown is very well lit up this year. The tree lit this time with flawlessly, I might say. It worked very well. So, and yes, please come out and visit the merchants downtown. They could use your support too by buying in local this year. I also want to say that, Christy, you commented on the lights. I too took a quick walk through the lights on Saturday evening, and as one of the founding members on the Winter Lights Committee, I was very humbled to see that putting up all those displays, this many years later, it still looks awesome. It was really quite an enlightening time to stand back and see all these lights that, you know, we were, as the committee, started. I also want to thank all those who come to the museum on Saturday evening. We had a very good turnout. There's been hundreds of letters written to Santa, and they've been posted at the museum, and I'm quite certain that Santa will be replying to all of them. I know on Saturday night alone, we had almost 170 visitors to the museum, and almost 70 children write letters to Santa. So thanks for braving the weather and coming out in the little bit of sleet we had, and making sure that your children got to see the lights and ask for their presents from Santa. So thank you, everyone, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. It was a successful first council meeting. The first one's under our belt, so it's all uphill from here, right? So everybody enjoy the holiday season. Take some time with your family and friends, and enjoy yourself. Well done, and we'll see you next Monday. So thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.